Chapter 1068. Mo Jingli's face twisted for a moment, but he quickly regained his composure. "Why are you looking for me?" Mo Jingyu asked. It was not a good feeling to have your weakness in someone else's hands, so Mo Jingyu did not want to see Mo Jingli at all. Mo Jingli smiled. "Of course there's something. In 2 days, it will be the Prince Ding Mansion's banquet. The thing I want you to do for me is also on that day." Mo Jingyu raised his eyebrows, waiting for him to speak. Mo Jingli said, "I want you to bring that Mo Yuchen from the Prince Ding Mansion out on that day." Mo Jingyu looked at him indifferently. "Do you think I have the ability to bring the heir of the Prince Ding Mansion out of the heavily guarded Prince Ding Mansion? Moreover, even if I bring him out, how can I get away afterwards?" "That's your problem," Mo Jingli said indifferently. "Methods are always thought of by people. As long as you want to, there will naturally be a way." Mo Jingyu flatly refused. "I have no way." Mo Jingli was silent for a moment, then said in a low voice, "No way. Then let me remind you, if you have no way, perhaps the little emperor you brought with you has a way." Mo Jingyu's expression changed slightly. "You want to use His Majesty?" Indeed, Mo Suiyun was only 11 or 12 years old. They were all children, so it was not easy for him to arouse suspicion. Mo Jingli sneered. "His Majesty. You sure know how to say it. Don't tell me you're worried about him. Anyway, he's Mo Jingqi's son. Even if he dies, it has nothing to do with you. Isn't that right?" Mo Jingyu was silent for a long time, then said, "I know. But, you'd better make sure you really have the ability. If you fail halfway, the Shadow Guard and Qi Lin of the Prince Ding Mansion are not to be trifled with." Mo Jingli smiled. "Don't worry. When that day comes, they'll be busy. Also, there's one more thing. Mo Jingli, don't push your luck." Mo Jingyu growled angrily. Looking at his angry appearance, Mo Jingli laughed happily and said leisurely, "Don't worry, this matter is even easier. On the day of the banquet at the Prince Ding Mansion, I want to go to the Prince Ding Mansion with you." "You're crazy." Mo Jingyu gritted her teeth. Mo Jingli glanced at him indifferently and did not refute. Mo Jingli took a deep breath and said in a rough voice, "I know, but what you have?" Mo Jingli nodded and said, "Don't worry. As long as I see Mo Yuchen, I will give you everything you want. You better keep your word." Mo Jingyu said hatefully. "Caw." A muffled sound came from outside the door. Mo Jingli's expression changed as he rushed out. "Who is it?" The door was opened, and a bright yellow voice hurriedly turned into the corridor. Mo Jingli sneered and rushed forward to bring the person back. Seeing Mo Suiyun thrown into the room, Mo Jingyu's expression turned ugly. Looking at Mo Jingli, she asked, "What should we do?" Mo Jingli snorted. "What do you mean, what should we do?" "Since he heard it, we'll just kill him." Mo Suiyun sat on the ground with a pale face, looking at the two people in front of him in horror. He accidentally saw someone enter Mo Jingyu's room, so he quietly came over to see who it was. He happened to see Mo Jingyu come back, but did not expect to hear their secret plan. He accidentally bumped into the wall and was discovered by Mo Jingli. "Uncle Yu." Mo Suiyun looked at Mo Jingyu in horror. Mo Jingyu frowned and said, "If His Majesty suddenly dies, it will arouse the suspicion of the Prince Ding Mansion." At that time, Mo Jingli thought for a while and also praised Mo Jingyu's words. The Prince Ding Mansion must be heavily protected by Mo Xiaobao now. It would not be easy to trick him out. At least among the people from the Chu state, Mo Suiyun had the highest chance. "But, I won't say anything, Uncle Li." Although Mo Jingli had changed a lot, Mo Suiyun still recognized Mo Jingli. The fear on his face deepened. Regardless of whether it was the princess or the prince, none of the people left behind by Mo Jingchi were not afraid of him. Mo Jingli narrowed his eyes and stared at Mo Suiyun for a while. He said indifferently, "If you don't want to die, be obedient." Mo Suiyun nodded repeatedly and wiped his tears. "I'll be obedient." "Uncle Li, don't kill me." Looking at his frightened appearance, Mo Jingli nodded with satisfaction and reached out to pull him up. Mo Suiyun stood up fearfully and felt uneasy under Mo Jingli's blade-like gaze. Mo Jingli looked at him and asked, "Do you know what you have to do?" Mo Suiyun hesitated for a moment and finally nodded. "Can you do it?" Mo Jingli asked. "Yes." Mo Suiyun nodded quickly and said, Mo Yuchen asked me to find him to play. I didn't go these days. I'll find him to play later. He will definitely come with me." Mo Jingli's lips curved into a cold smile. He raised his hand and patted Mo Suiyun's head, saying, "Very good, Uncle Li knows you are a good boy. As long as you bring Mo Yuchen out of the Prince Ding Mansion on the day of the Prince Ding Mansion banquet, you will still be the Emperor of Dechu State. Uncle Li won't hurt you." Mo Suiyun couldn't help shivering and whispered, "Uncle Li, I know." Chapter 1069. Mo Suiyun returned to his room and immediately closed the door. He lifted the quilt and stuffed himself in, hiding under the thick brocade quilt and trembling. He wasn't a particularly smiling person, but he believed that all his brothers and sisters had the same deep impression of this Uncle Li. In the palace in Nanjing, they saw with their own eyes how Mo Jingli tortured Mo Suiyun. And his malicious eyes that swept over them from time to time, each of them left a deep shadow on Mo Suiyun, who was still young at that time. This time, Mo Suiyun trembled fiercely and hugged the quilt even tighter. Just now, he clearly felt that Mo Jingli wasn't just scaring him, but really wanted to kill him. No, I can't die. I can't die. Mo Suiyun whispered, "What should I do? What should I do? Deceive Mo Yuchen out and let Mo Jingli kill him?" Mo Suiyun shook his head fiercely. Although he didn't like Mo Yuchen, and subconsciously regarded him as a future enemy. But now, he wasn't qualified to be compared with Mo Yuchen and the Prince Ding Mansion. Therefore, his current enemy was definitely not Mo Yuchen. And Prince Ding, that terrible white-clothed and white-haired Prince Ding. If he killed Mo Yuchen, Mo Suiyun couldn't help but tremble again. No, he absolutely couldn't provoke Prince Ding. But, what should he do? Who wants you to die? A laughing voice came into his ears. Mo Suiyun was startled, and after a long while, he suddenly lifted the quilt and saw Mo Xiaobao sitting by the bed and looking at him curiously with a smile. "Why are you here?" Seeing Mo Xiaobao, Mo Suiyun's face suddenly turned pale. He quickly got up and wanted to see if there was anyone outside. Mo Xiaobao tilted his head and smiled, "Don't worry, there's no one outside." Mo Suiyun breathed a sigh of relief, staring at Mo Xiaobao silently. Mo Xiaobao didn't care, sitting leisurely and looking at Mo Suiyun, who was standing by the bed in a daze. Actually, Mo Xiaobao also knew that compared to Mo Suiyun, he was definitely considered fortunate. At least, he had grown up happily under the protection of everyone, unlike Mo Suiyun, who had grown up in fear and trepidation in the harem. Now, he was being manipulated like a puppet by the courtiers and nobles of Dechu State. Under such circumstances, Mo Suiyun was still able to carefully conceal his thoughts. It was no wonder that Lord Father would look at him in a different light. Mo Suiyun was also sizing up Mo Xiaobao as he struggled in his heart. He knew that it was very likely that Mo Jingli had not left yet. If he called someone over now. Very soon, Mo Suiyun shook his head. Mo Xiaobao would definitely not come here alone. Even if he was naughty, the people of the Prince Ding mansion would protect him in secret. Even if Mo Jingli killed Mo Yuchen, they would be the ones to bear Prince Ding's anger in the end. Unless Mo Jingli could kill Prince Ding. But, could Mo Jingli kill Prince Ding? Of course not. If Mo Jingli had this ability, it would not be his turn to sit on the throne now. So, Mo Yuchen could not be hurt. At least, Mo Yuchen could not die here. Go. Go quickly. Mo Suiyun came back to his senses and pulled Mo Xiaobao towards the window. Mo Xiaobao looked at him in surprise and said, "What are you doing? I came to play with you, and you want to drive me away like this." Mo Suiyun said angrily, "I'm not feeling well today, you go first." The more anxious he was, the more relaxed Mo Xiaobao was. He leaned on the table with a smile and said, "If you're not feeling well, then rest. I won't disturb you." Mo Suiyun was so anxious that he wanted to cry. If he had the ability, he would have picked up Mo Xiaobao and thrown him out. Mo Xiaobao gently fluttered his long eyelashes and looked at him with a smile. He said slowly, "Why are you so anxious? It's as if you're afraid that others will know that I'm here. Don't worry, this is Glass City. Even if King Yu knows that I came here secretly, he won't do anything to me." King Yu was nothing. Mo Suiyun cursed in his heart, "In short, hurry up and leave. I don't want to play with you today. I want to play with you. Why don't we go out and play?" Mo Xiaobao's eyes lit up as he said with a smile. "Young Master Mo, can I beg you to go back first?" Mo Suiyun couldn't help but groan. Whose life was he doing this for? Mo Xiaobao raised his handsome eyebrows and patted Mo Suiyun's shoulder. He laughed softly and said, "All right, I won't tease you anymore. Brother, if you have any difficulties, tell me. Is there anything that I can't handle in Glass City?" Mo Xiaobao acted as if they were brothers and had taken care of everything for their brothers. Mo Suiyun glanced at Mo Xiaobao with disdain. What could a kid who was shorter than him who only knew how to play do? He would be thankful if Mo Jingli didn't know that he was here and was killed by Mo Jingli. Mo Suiyun said snappily, "In short, hurry up and leave." Seeing that he was unwilling to speak, Mo Xiaobao didn't force him. He shrugged and said, "Then I'll go back first. If there's anything, get someone to find me at the Prince Ding mansion." "I got it, let's go." Seeing that he was finally willing to leave, Mo Suiyun naturally agreed and pushed him towards the window. Mo Xiaobao slapped his hand away and said, "It's enough to go to a place once. If I go through the window again, am I waiting to be caught?" Walking to a corner of the room, Mo Xiaobao leaped up and used the wall as leverage to sit firmly on the beam. He turned around and waved at Mo Suiyun. Mo Xiaobao then drilled out from a place on the roof that had been opened at some point. Seeing Mo Xiaobao reveal such a skill, Mo Suiyun was still stunned. Although he had seen many people with better qigong than Mo Xiaobao, those people were much older than Mo Xiaobao. To have such a body at such a young age, no wonder Mo Xiaobao dared to sneak into the Chu State's post house in broad daylight. After finally sending Mo Xiaobao away, Mo Suiyun secretly heaved a sigh of relief. "Your Majesty." Mo Jingyu's voice came from outside the door. Mo Suiyun's body stiffened, but he quickly recovered and walked over to open the door. "Uncle Yu." Mo Jingyu stood at the door and looked at Mo Suiyun strangely. "Why did you lock the door?" Mo Suiyun bit the corner of his lips and said in a low voice, "Uncle Yu, Mo Jingyu looked at him in understanding. "You're afraid?" Mo Suiyun nodded heavily. Mo Jingyu sighed helplessly. Now that things have come to this, we have no choice but to do it. Your Majesty, you're not a child anymore. There are many things that you should understand. Mo Suayan's face darkened. He said in a low voice, I understand, Uncle Yu. Uncle. Uncle Li has left. He's gone. Mo Jingyu said in a low voice. At the mention of Mo Jingli, his expression did not look too good. He cursed in a low voice. That lunatic. Who knows what he went to do again? Your Majesty, you don't have to be afraid. The day after tomorrow, as long as you follow Uncle Yu's instructions, you'll be fine. Mo Suayun nodded obediently. I understand, Uncle Yu. Seeing his listless appearance, Mo Jingyu knew that he must have been badly frightened just now. Among the remaining princes of Mo Jingqi, Mo Suayun's performance was already considered not bad. If Mo Suayun, who had already passed away, encountered such a thing, he would have been scared to the point of crying. That's different. Mo Xiaobao said, My mother said that there are no eternal friends in this world, nor are there eternal enemies. There are only eternal benefits. Mo Suayun didn't want to go against the Prince Ding mansion now. If he went against the Prince Ding mansion now, he wouldn't get any benefits. Instead, he would be in big trouble. Since that's the case, why can't he cooperate with us? The enemy of an enemy is a friend. I feel that if he had to choose a side, he would definitely choose to cooperate with the Prince Ding mansion. It's a pity that he pushed you out just now. Qin Lai slowly reminded. Mo Xiaobao raised his hand and scratched his little head. He frowned and thought for a long time before saying, He doesn't believe me. He had acted too much before. In Mo Suayun's eyes, he was probably a child who didn't know anything and only knew how to eat, drink, and play. Then what do you want? Qin Lai asked. Mo Xiaobao said, You wait here. I'll go down again. Qin Lai also knew that he couldn't win against Mo Xiaobao. He silently lay down on the ground and watched as Mo Xiaobao removed the glazed tiles that were just put back one by one. Then, he jumped down from the small hole again. When night fell, Mo Xiaobao brought Qin Lai back to the Prince Ding mansion with a joyful expression. The moment he entered, he saw Uncle Mo, who was standing at the door waiting for them, giving him a pitiful look. Mo Xiaobao instantly felt that something was wrong. He hurriedly went up to Chief Steward Mo and smiled obediently. Grandfather Mo. Chief Steward Mo hurriedly said, This old servant doesn't dare. Little Shitsi can just call this old servant Chief Steward. Mo Xiaobao didn't care about this. He smiled and asked, Grandfather Mo, where are my father and mother? Chief Steward Mo said, The prince and princess consort are waiting for little Shitsi in the study. Mo Xiaobao's shoulders instantly slumped. He said with a sad face, It's over. When he left in the morning, he forgot to tell his mother and father that he would be back later. Mo Xiaobao firmly refused to admit that he didn't consider the fact that it was easy to enter the Dechu State's post house but difficult to leave. Furthermore, he got carried away by hooking up with a certain someone and forgot the time. Chief Steward Mo patted little Shitsi's shoulder lovingly and said, The prince and princess consort are waiting for little Shitsi. Little Shitsi, quickly go to the study. Can I not go? Mo Xiaobao looked pitifully at Chief Steward Mo. Chief Steward Mo gave him a helpless look. Mo Xiaobao could only lower his head and slowly walk towards the study. Oh. Our little Shitsi is back. In the study, Mo Xiuyao was reclining on the soft couch, lazily flipping open a book. Seeing Mo Xiaobao enter, he gave him a faint smile. Mo Xiaobao carefully looked at Yili sitting on the other side. His expression became even more gloomy. He saw Yili sitting upright on the stool, looking at him with an indifferent expression. Other than a trace of relief flashing through her eyes when he entered, there was no other expression. Mo Xiaobao's mouth was bitter. Mother's anger was worse than father's anger. Mother, Xiaobao is back. Walking in front of Yili, Mo Xiaobao said in a small voice. Yili looked at him indifferently and asked in a soft voice, "Why did you come back so late?" Mo Xiaobao said in a low voice, "This child went to Dechu State's post house to play with the little emperor." Actually, how could Yili and Mo Xiaoyao not know about this? Even when Mo Xiaobao sneaked out, there were still many people following him. Moreover, Mo Xiaobao always had a sense of propriety. Normally, he would not deliberately shake off the shadow guard that followed him. If not for this, the entire Prince Ding mansion would have been in chaos when Mo Xiaobao didn't come back so late. Yili smiled at him and said, "It seems like the Dechu State's post house is very fun. It made you forget the time to return home. Tomorrow, Mother will go and ask King Yu, what exactly is in the Dechu State's post house that attracts our little Shitzi." Yili never liked to restrict her child too much, so Mo Xiaobao had always been free to run around Glass City. But there was one rule. Other than Lishan Academy, he had to return home before sunset. Even if he was going to stay at the Su family temporarily, he had to send someone back to inform them in advance. But today, Mo Xiaobao didn't say anything until now. From beginning to end, he didn't tell anyone what he was doing. If it wasn't for the shadow guard following him, an ordinary family would have been anxious to death. Chapter 1071. Mother. Xiaobao didn't think it through. Xiaobao knows his mistake. Mo Xiaobao admitted his mistake with a bitter face. He had hurriedly sneaked in to find Mo Suiyun and indeed didn't say anything. Perhaps he knew that the shadow guard was following him, so he was so fearless. "What did you do wrong?" Yili asked. Mo Xiaobao obediently lowered his head. Xiaobao shouldn't have sneaked out without telling mother and father. I shouldn't have come back too late and forgotten to let someone report and make mother worry. I shouldn't have sneaked out to find the little emperor of Dechu State. Looking at her son's lowered head and pitiful appearance, Yili's heart softened. She raised her hand to rub his little head. Mother and father didn't hide the big matter in Glass City from you. You also know that the Queen and Prince of Nanzhao were held hostage by Mo Jingli. Right now, Mo Jingli and Mo Jingyu's relationship is unclear, yet you still sent yourself to him. What if Mo Jingli injures you in a life and death struggle? What will you do then? Mother, this child was wrong. Feeling his mother's worry, Mo Xiaobao felt even more guilty. He felt that Mo Suiyun was very foolish and slow-witted and wanted to find him to get some information. He thought that in broad daylight, even if Mo Jingyu and Mo Jingli colluded, they wouldn't dare to do anything to him. However, he forgot that a cornered dog would do something desperate. If Mo Jingli completely lost his rationality and wanted to fight to the death with the Prince Ding mansion, he, who ran into Dechu State's post house, was the best bargaining chip. Yili raised her hand to knock his little head. She calmly said, "Since you know your mistake, you'll be grounded for 3 months. Write 30 pieces of calligraphy every day and bring them to your eldest uncle for inspection." Mother. Mo Xiaobao really wanted to cry. Of all the punishments, Mo Xiaobao hated being grounded the most. He couldn't leave his own courtyard, and no one would go find him to play. Only the teachers took turns to teach him. Not to mention the 30 pieces of calligraphy. Unlike copying books, the requirements for practicing calligraphy were much stricter. His eldest uncle, who was good at calligraphy, was even more strict about this. When Mo Xiaobao first started practicing calligraphy, there were times when he couldn't find a single piece that satisfied Su Qingqin. In other words, out of the 30 that his mother said, he might end up writing 40 or even 100. Yili looked at him indifferently, smiling without saying anything. Xiao Bao instantly knew that there was no hope for his mother. He could only stare at Emo Xiaoyao, who was not far away. Lord Father. Emo Xiaoyao sat up and raised his eyebrows at Emo Xiaoyao, who was looking at him pleadingly. He smiled calmly and said, Li, it's not appropriate to punish Xiao Bao like this. Yi Li raised her eyebrows and looked at Emo Xiaoyao in surprise. Normally, if he saw her punish Emo Xiaoyao, he would only complain that the punishment was too light. It was already good enough that he did not add fuel to the fire. This was the first time she had pleaded for Emo Xiao Bao. How is it not appropriate? Yi Li asked. Emo Xiaoyao softly said, in 2 days, it will be Lin and Xan's first birthday banquet. At that time, Xiao Bao, as the older brother, will be grounded. Wouldn't that be a joke to outsiders? Yi Li frowned. For such a large banquet, Emo Xiao Bao, as the little heir of the Prince Ding mansion, would not be able to attend. But this was not a big deal. She could just let him out when the time came. Emo Xiaoyao walked to Yi Li's side and sat down. He smiled and said, I know that you are worried about Xiao Bao's safety, so you want to ground him. But Xiao Bao is no longer a child. This time should be an accident. Isn't that right, Xiao Bao? Seeing Lord Father plead for him, Emo Xiao Bao was overjoyed. He nodded and said, Yes, Mother. This child did not come back late on purpose. This child heard something very important at the post house. Let's hear it. Yi Li nodded. Emo Xiao Bao hurriedly told her what he heard at the post house and his conversation with Emo Suiyun. Then, he said, so, this child was afraid that if the guards of the Dechu state found out, wouldn't it alert the enemy? So I waited until the sky turned dark before leaving the post house with Qin Lai. Mother, this child really knows his mistake. Yi Li's expression changed slightly. Mo Jingli is in the post house. Why didn't you let someone come out to report? If something happened. Mo Xiaoyao raised his hand to hold Yi Li's slightly cold hand. He looked at Mo Xiaobao and said, so, you and Mo Suiyun have reached an agreement. Mo Xiaobao said somewhat helplessly, my Suiyun doesn't believe me. Someone must represent Lord Father to make a trip. Mo Xiaoyao pondered for a moment and nodded, I'll let Han Mingyue make a trip later. After speaking, he patted Mo Xiaobao's head and said, you did very well. Lord Father is very pleased. But, you were still a bit rash. Li, let's move his punishment to half a month later. Lord Father. Hearing this, Mo Xiaobao wailed. Didn't Lord Father plead for him? Why did he still have to be punished? Mo Xiaoyao looked at his son with a radiant smile and asked softly, what's wrong? Are you not satisfied? Then why don't we follow your mother's suggestion and ground him from tomorrow onwards? Mo Xiaobao immediately wilted. He shook his head dejectedly and said, no, thank you Lord Father. Mo Xiaoyao nodded in satisfaction and said, this is Lord Father's good son. Be good. Go back and eat your meal and rest. Despicable. Mo Xiaobao looked at Mo Xiaoyao from a place where Yi Li couldn't see. Mo Xiaoyao smiled back, you did something wrong and got caught by your mother. What does it have to do with I? Chapter 1072. Lishan Academy. As usual, Mr. Qingyun sat leisurely in the bamboo forest behind the academy and drank tea. Now that Lishan Academy was on the right track, Mr. Qingyun was old and no longer suitable to teach personally. Other than Mr. Qingyun giving lectures to all the students every once in a while, most of the time, he was very leisurely. Today, the bamboo forest was very lively. Mo Xiaoyao, Yi Li, Mo Xiaobao, Lin Xan and the Su family were all gathered here. Even though he was very quiet as he got older, seeing his children and grandchildren gathered around him, Mr. Qingyun's face still had a few more smiles. Tomorrow is Lin and Axan's first birthday banquet. Why did you come out of the city today? Mr. Qingyun drank the tea that Yili personally brewed as he asked. Yili smiled and said, "It's because tomorrow is the first birthday banquet of the two little ones that we came to bring grandfather back to the city." Mr. Qingyun smiled and looked at her and said, "Am I so old that I can't go back to the city myself?" Mo Wio leaned against Yili and laughed softly, saying, "Clearly, Wang Fei said that she hadn't come to greet Mr. Qingyun after coming back for so long, so she came personally. Who knew that everyone would come along?" Yungu was also brought along by Su Qingchen. She smiled at everyone and said, "It's very fun outside the city. Everyone likes it." Yili looked guiltily at Mr. Qingyun. After coming back for more than a month, she didn't have time to come out of the city to greet grandfather. Even her fourth brother and Qing Yan, who just came back from outside, came. She really was too unfilial. Mr. Qingyun looked lovingly at Yili and said with a smile, "You all have important matters to attend to. Grandfather has always been here. Isn't it the same when I come? Why take such a small matter to heart?" Yili smiled faintly and said, "Li is unfilial. I made grandfather worry and let those people disturb grandfather." Mr. Qingyun shook his head and indicated that Yili didn't need to mind. She looked at Yili, then at Mo Xiaoyao who was sitting next to her, and then at the children in front of her. She nodded in satisfaction. When he married Yili to Mo Xiaoyao, Mr. Qingyun was actually not very satisfied. However, he had no choice but to do so. Mr. Qingyun had always felt guilty for not taking care of his daughter's only child. Fortunately, Li and that daughter of his who passed away early didn't believe in it. After so many years, the two of them became a celestial couple that everyone envied. Mr. Qingyun could tell that Mo Xiaoyao valued his granddaughter more than anything else. Mr. Qingyun was very satisfied that Yili could be so happy. He didn't care about these trivial matters. "I heard that many things have happened recently. The Queen of Nanzhao hasn't been found yet?" Mr. Qingyun asked. Su Qingchen frowned slightly and said, "Grandfather, don't worry. Princess Anqi and the prince should be fine. In these 2 days, there should be a result. After all, they were in the Prince Ding Mansion's territory. If they were really played by Mo Jingli, the Prince Ding Mansion wouldn't be able to survive." The Prince Ding Mansion's shadow guard had already found some traces of Mo Jingli's whereabouts. However, in consideration of Princess Anqi's safety, they couldn't force him too much. But no matter what, they definitely couldn't let Mo Jingli and his remaining accomplices escape Glass City again. Mr. Qingyun didn't like to care about these things. Hearing Su Qingchen's words, he relaxed and only said, "As the saying goes, a cornered dog will jump over a wall." The characters of the Dechu State's imperial family. The old man shook his head and sighed, "In short, you all have to be careful. Otherwise, Mo Jingli will fight to the death." Mo Xiaoyao nodded and said, "I will remember Mr. Qingyun's teachings." Yili held Mr. Qingyun's arm and said with a smile, "Grandfather, actually, we came here today to ask you about something else." Mr. Qingyun raised his eyebrows and said with a smile, "You all did very well. What else is there for an old man like me to worry about?" Yili smiled and looked at Su Qingfeng, Su Qingbai, and the others sitting on one side. Then she looked at the two Madame Su on the other side and said with a smile, "I discussed with eldest aunt and second aunt that after Lin and Axan's first birthday banquet, we will hold third brother and fourth brother's wedding. That's why I asked grandfather to go back and preside over the situation." Su Qingfeng and the others didn't expect Yili to suddenly say this. Su Qingfeng and Su Qingbai were fine, but Mo Wuyo and Hua Tianxiang immediately blushed. Mr. Qingyun looked at the two girls with a gentle expression and nodded with a smile. That's good. I remember, the 26th of this month is a good day. But, it's too rushed. Will we be able to make it in time? There's still time, there's still time. Our family has already prepared for a bad time. The two Madame Su repeatedly agreed. After waiting for their son to get married for so many years, it was finally here. Not to mention that there was still some time, even if it was tomorrow, they had to prepare it for him. Mr. Qingyun nodded and said with a smile, that's good. Then let's set it for today. Qingfeng, Qingbai, you're not young anymore. After you get married, you'll be adults. You have to represent Tianxiang and Wuyo well. Yes, grandfather. Su Qingfeng and Su Qingbai replied in unison. The children of the Su family generally got married late. Su Qingchen was still single after the new year. Therefore, before they got married, they were already able to take care of themselves. Mr. Qingyun was very confident in his grandson. He said this out of concern for the younger generation. After giving instructions to Su Qingfeng and Su Qingbai, Mr. Qingyun's gaze swept past Su Qingchen and Yungu. He shook his head helplessly and didn't say anything. Because of Yi Li's mention of marriage, everyone suddenly became excited. Other than Hua Tianxiang and Mo Wuyo, who were going to be newlyweds, everyone was excitedly discussing how to hold the wedding. Even Su Hongyu and Su Hongyan, who were always calm and collected, had smiles on their faces. Prince, Princess. Qin Feng quickly walked over and reported in a deep voice. Mo Xiuyao asked, what's the matter? Qin Feng said, there's news of Nanzhao's Princess Anxi. Yi Li and Mo Xiuyao looked at each other and stood up. Mo Xiuyao said, let's talk about it when we get back. Yi Li nodded apologetically at everyone and said, we'll be leaving first. Su Qingfeng said with a smile, Li Her, don't worry. Third brother will guarantee that grandfather and father will be safely sent back to Li City. Su Qingfeng was the commander of Qilin. With him here, Mo Jingli wouldn't attack Mr. Qingyun even if he didn't have eyes. Yi Li nodded and patted Mo Xiuyao's head to indicate that he should be obedient. Then, she followed Mo Xiuyao out of the bamboo forest. Looking at the two leaving hand in hand, Mr. Qingyun smiled faintly and said, you came so early in the morning because you were worried that Mo Jingli would attack Lishan Academy. Su Qingfeng rubbed his head and said with a smile, it's better to be safe than sorry. Who can guarantee that Mo Jingli, that madman, won't attack this place? Mr. Qingyun glanced at everyone and said, then why did so many of you come here? Aren't you going to be wiped out? Chapter 1073. Hearing this, those who came to join in the fun, such as Su Qingyan, quickly shrunk their heads and left after saying that they were going to take a stroll. Not long after, only Master Qingyun, Su Hongyu, Su Hongyan, Su Qingchen, Su Qingze, and Su Qingbai were left in the bustling bamboo forest. Is there anything else? Master Qingyun looked at his grandson and asked calmly. Su Hongyu hesitated and said, there is something I need to ask father. Master Qingyun raised his snow-white eyebrows. Is it related to Qingfeng and Qingbai's marriage? If it wasn't because of this, Li Er wouldn't have suddenly mentioned Su Qingfeng and Su Qingbai's marriage. Although it was time for the two to get married, there was no need to rush it. Su Hongyu nodded and said, that's right. These days, many aristocratic families have come to our door and expressed their intention to have a marriage alliance with the Su family. Master Qingyun frowned slightly and a rare trace of displeasure appeared between his brows. Don't they know that Qingbai and Qingfeng are already engaged? Su Hongyu smiled bitterly and helplessly. The rules and etiquette in this world were just for the common people who didn't know the truth to see. Which aristocratic family with a long history didn't have a bit of shameful things? Even a family like the Su family had a history of betraying its master and killing the emperor. Therefore, as long as they could achieve their goals and obtain the benefits they wanted, why would these people care if the young masters of the Su family were engaged? Moreover, although Hua Tianxiang and Imo Wuyo's status was noble, in the eyes of these people, there was only one word that could describe it: the decline of their family. Most importantly, even if Su Qingbai and Su Qingfeng were married, the most important young master of the Su family, Su Qingchen, was still single. What did Li Er say? Master Qingyun asked calmly. Su Hongyu smiled faintly. Li said that the matters of the imperial court don't need to involve marriage. She also doesn't need her brothers and friends to sacrifice their happiness for her. That's why she told father that she wants Qingbai and Qingbai to get married as soon as possible. It can also be considered as cutting off these people's thoughts. Li Er's personality and thoughts are really. The people in this world had long been accustomed to linking the imperial court and marriage together. That was why there was the term marriage alliance. However, Yili seemed to dislike mixing these two things together. It wasn't just because she was a member of the Su family and her friend. Mr. Qingyun nodded approvingly and said, although your way of thinking is different from ordinary people, you dare to think, dare to do, and have the courage to bear the consequences. In this aspect, all of you are inferior to Li Er. Su Qingchen smiled and said, a girl like Li Er, 1 in a million doesn't appear in this world. But fortunately, there's only one. Su Hongyu glanced at his son and said, don't stay out of this. After all, this matter isn't directed at your third brother and fourth brother. Young Master Qin Qin. Right, Chief Minister of the Prince Ding Mansion, what do you plan to do? There were many people in the Prince Ding Mansion over the age of 30 who were still unmarried, such as Han Mingyue, Han Mingxi, and even Feng Zhiyao. However, there were very few people in high positions like young Master Qin Qin who didn't have the slightest interest in women. In the past, all kinds of things happened in the Prince Ding Mansion, so no one cared. Now that the world was peaceful and Su Qingchen was the right chief minister of the Prince Ding Mansion, he naturally had many people watching him. If Su Qingchen didn't take it seriously, he would say all kinds of unpleasant things in the future. Mr. Hongyu had always been good at preparing for a rainy day, so he naturally had to give his son a warning. Su Qingchen smiled faintly and didn't seem to be anxious at all. Su Qingbai raised his eyebrows and smiled gently. Didn't Big Brother and Miss Shin? Su Qingbai was in West Hill all year round. It could be said that he was the least familiar with Yungu in the Su family, so he called her Miss Shin. Su Qingchen glanced at him faintly and said, fourth brother, you think too much. Su Qingbai blinked and a strange smile flashed across his eyes. He didn't say anything. But Su Hongyu and Su Hongyan, who were reminded by him, looked at each other. In the end, Su Hongyan said, Qingbai is right. Qingchen, what do you think of Yungu? Your mother, second aunt, and your father all like this girl very much. If that's what you mean. Second uncle, you think too much. Su Qingchen was still elegant and the width of his smile didn't change at all. Su Qingbai looked at his big brother for a moment and said with a smile, I heard that Miss Yungu is quite afraid of Big Brother. Young Master Qingchen has always been known for his amiability. Why would anyone be afraid of him? Big Brother, what did you do to the girl? Su Qingbai. Su Qingchen called faintly, but his eyes were full of warning when he looked at Su Qingbai. Su Qingbai shrugged with a smile and raised his hand to show that it was over. Although his big brother's appearance was always extraordinary like an immortal, he was merciless when it came to messing with people. For the time being, he didn't have the ability to compete with his big brother. Su Qingbai always knew what it meant to know one's own limitations. That girl called Yungu is not bad. Mr. Qingyun smiled and leisurely concluded. He looked at his most important eldest grandson and said, "Now that your second brother already has Rui, your third brother and fourth brother are about to get married. Our Su family isn't in a hurry to have an heir. Your father and I have never pressured you about your marriage, but you should think about it carefully. It can't be that you really plan to cultivate and become an immortal in the future, right? Grandfather, you're too serious." Qingchen understands. In front of Mr. Qingyun, Su Qingchen had always been very obedient. It's good that you understand. You don't have to rush him too much. Mr. Qingyun nodded with satisfaction and said to his two sons, "However, since this matter is directed at you, you have to deal with it yourself. If you really like the daughter of a famous family, it's okay to marry her. But, your sister is right. The Prince Ding mansion doesn't need a marriage alliance, and the Su family doesn't need one. Do you understand? Qingchen will remember grandfather's teachings." Su Qingchen replied in a deep voice. Su Qingchen and Su Qingbai walked out of the bamboo forest side by side and saw Qingjing with Hua Tianxiang and a few children playing in a meadow full of flowers outside the bamboo forest. Su Qingbai's gaze turned from Mo Wuyo to Yungu, who was holding a bunch of flowers and smiling especially brightly. He said with a faint smile, "In all these years, I've never seen a girl who can smile so happily. We have experienced too much, understood too much, and knew too much. Even if we are happy, it's hard to express it without restraint. Big brother, don't you think so?" Following his gaze, Su Qingchen's expression softened slightly. On the green grassland, there were light purple, light yellow, light blue, and pink flowers decorating this piece of tender green heaven and earth. A beautiful yellow-clothed girl was holding a bouquet of colorful flowers, smiling happily. The faint sunlight sprinkled on her body. Her entire person seemed to have a faint layer of gentle light, making people feel warm from the heart. Chapter 1074. Su Qingbai was right, he had never seen a girl who could smile so happily. Even if she didn't do anything, just seeing her smile could make people feel that all their tiredness and unhappiness were swept away. Perhaps this was because her life was too simple and happy. Since young, she had never experienced any schemes and those dark things. She was very smart, she could clearly distinguish who was good to her and who was bad to her. Those who were good to her, she would repay them double. Those who were bad to her, she would simply throw them to the back of her mind and not pay them any attention. This was another kind of gratification and vengeance. Big brother, if there are flowers to pluck, then pluck them. Don't wait until there are no flowers to pluck. Su Qingbai smiled and left this sentence, then walked towards the group of people playing on the grass. Eldest uncle, fourth uncle. Mo Xiaobao, who was originally entangled with Su Jirue, immediately rushed over when he saw the two people. Su Qingbai caught Mo Xiaobao and frowned, saying, "Mo Xiaobao, you've gotten fat." Mo Xiaobao's delicate little face suddenly stiffened. After a while, he pitifully raised his little paw. "Fourth uncle, I will soon be as thin as firewood and bones." "Why?" "I was punished by mother, grounded for 3 months." Mo Xiaobao faintly said. Su Qingbai sympathetically patted his little head. "Eat more these few days." Mo Xiaobao dejectedly drooped his head. "Big brother, fourth brother." Qingjing pulled Su Jirue and greeted the two with a smile. Su Qingchen walked forward and nodded, saying, "Grandfather is almost done with the preparations. Everyone should also prepare to return to the city." Qingjing also knew that tomorrow was the Prince Ding Mansion's birthday banquet and there were still many things to do. She quickly nodded, saying, "Yes, let's go see if there's anything else to pack." Qingjing left with the girls and children. Yungu naturally followed beside Mo Wuyo. She secretly glanced at Su Qingchen and sighed in her heart. Yungu, you come with me. Su Qingchen's faint voice came from behind. The smile on Yun Jiyi's face suddenly froze. She turned around and stared blankly at Su Qingchen. Su Qingchen strolled in front of her and asked, "Have you finished the homework I told you to do?" I'm done." Miss Yungu was at a loss. If they were not in Lishan Academy, she would have rushed to the study to get her homework for Su Qingchen to check. Su Qingchen frowned slightly and nodded. "Let's go." Yungu nodded repeatedly and followed closely behind Su Qingchen. However, no matter how one looked at her back, it was bleak and desolate. Looking at their departing figures from afar, Su Qingbai couldn't help but chuckle. "Fourth brother, what are you laughing at?" Su Qingfeng suddenly appeared behind him and asked curiously. Su Qingbai shook his head and turned around with a smile. "Big brother, are you thinking of taking in a disciple?" "Accept a disciple? What kind of disciple does Big Brother have?" Su Qingfeng was at a loss. What could Su Qingchen teach as a disciple? How could he produce an immortal young master? Su Qingbai stroked his chin and said thoughtfully, "But why do I feel that Big Brother treats Yunj like a student and a teacher? Furthermore, they are students and teachers who are very afraid of teachers." Su Qingfeng glanced at the two figures who had already walked far away. He lowered his head and couldn't help but feel amused. Needless to say, they really did look alike. After a long while, the two brothers looked at each other, and a very strange thought appeared in their minds. The genius immortal young master. Could it be that he really doesn't eat the food of the common populace, and doesn't know how to pursue the girl he likes? No one would believe that young Master Qingchen really treated Yungu as his own disciple. Miss Yungu was very smart and cute, but she had no interest in music, chess, calligraphy, painting, and especially in politics. Moreover, she wasn't smart enough to make young Master Qingchen look at her differently. Thinking of this, the two of them shivered. In this world, no one is perfect. Su Qingbai sighed. What sin did Miss Shen commit in her previous life to make Big Brother take a fancy to her? Su Qingfeng shook his head and said regretfully. Young Master Qingchen looked gentle and refined, but when he lectured someone, he only needed a faint look to make you feel so ashamed that you wished you had never been born. No wonder Miss Yungu looked at Su Qingchen like a mouse seeing a cat. The two brothers looked at each other and sent their most sincere blessings and prayers to Miss Yungu in their hearts. In a secluded little village outside Glass City, Mo Xiaoyao and Yili stood outside a simple house. Mo Xiaoyao's face was gloomy. Yili pulled his hand and shook it gently. Mo Xiaoyao looked down at Yili and his face softened a little. Qin Feng stood not far from the two of them and said in a low voice, "Prince, Princess, they have left." Mo Xiaoyao looked at the simple house in front of him and said thoughtfully, "During this period, Mo Jingli has been living here? No one discovered him?" Qin Feng nodded and said, "This subordinate had people secretly ask around. The person living here during this period is a middle-aged man with a big beard. The time is the same as when Mo Jingli sneaked into the northwest, but he doesn't look like Mo Jingli at all." Big beard. Mo Xiaoyao's face flashed with a strange look. He changed his appearance. Qin Feng nodded and said, "Yes, he changed his appearance. He found some disguises in the room. But there was no trace of Princess Anxi or the little prince. The people nearby also said that they didn't see a woman or a baby." Mo Xiaoyao nodded and said, "Mo Jingli has become smarter now. Naturally, he wouldn't put Princess Anxi and the child together with himself. But, if he really is living here, then Princess Anxi can't be too far away." Yili nodded in agreement with Mo Xiaoyao's opinion. She ordered, with this place as the center, See if there's any place within a radius of 10 li that can hide someone. Qin Feng acknowledged and left. Mo Xiuyao turned and pulled Yi Li, saying, "Let's go in and take a look." The two entered the room. Because the Prince Ding mansion had just been searched by the Shadow Guard, the room was a bit messy. But even in its original state, the room wasn't much better. There was a simple and crude table with 4 long stools, a bed made of wooden planks, and a shabby old cabinet. There were also some shabby clothes on the bed. Other than that, there was nothing useful. Yi Li sighed softly and said, "He's changed a lot. In the past, he wouldn't have been able to live in a place like this for so long." One could say that Mo Jingli was cruel and merciless, or that he was reckless and impulsive. In fact, Mo Jingli had never suffered much, so he always gave people a feeling that he was above everyone else. Living in such a shabby place for so long wasn't something that the old Mo Jingli would have been able to do. Mo Xiuyao smiled and said, "People change. If he wants to live, he naturally has to endure some things that he couldn't do in the past. Now it seems, the effect is quite good. For Mo Jingli to reach such a state of complete defeat, it's obvious that he hasn't suffered enough. Only through suffering could one rise above others." This sentence was not just for show. If Mo Jingli's current situation was compared to 10 years ago, perhaps Mo Jingli's future would have been bright. Mo Xiuyao rejoiced in Mo Jingli's misfortune, not realizing that he was the one who caused all of Mo Jingli's suffering. Chapter 1075. What is this? Yi Li lowered her head and picked up a delicate box from the foot of the bed. She frowned. She opened it. It was a box of light red rouge with the scent of osmanthus flowers. Yi Li frowned in confusion. Why is this here? Could it be Princess Anxi was kidnapped and brought here? Yi Li quickly realized that something was wrong. She shook her head. No, even if Princess Anxi is special, Mo Jingli wouldn't provide her with rouge. But from the looks of the rouge, it didn't look like it was left behind by the previous owner of this house. The value of this rouge was enough to cover the expenses of a family in this village for half a year. It's not bad, Qin Feng. Mo Xiuyao took it and looked at it. A strange smile appeared on his face. He handed it to Qin Feng, who was waiting at the door. Qin Feng sniffed it and said in a low voice, "This is the rouge that the fragrance pavilion in Glass City started selling last month. It's called Guanghan fragrance. You know a lot about it." Mo Xiuyao looked at him with a faint smile. Qin Feng lowered his head in embarrassment. Yi Li smiled faintly. She remembered that Yaoji also liked the scent of osmanthus flowers. She shook her head. "I remember that the rouge from the fragrance pavilion is very expensive. Not many people can afford it. Go find out when it was bought." Qin Feng nodded in agreement. He turned and left to give orders. Mo Xiuyao pulled Yi Li and said with a smile, "Let's go back. We won't find anything here. Tomorrow is the most important day." Yi Li nodded. "All right." No matter what Mo Jingli wanted to do, he wouldn't miss tomorrow. They really should make more preparations. In a dark and secluded cave, Princess Anxi was holding a baby. She looked at the baby lovingly. The baby had just had some breast milk and had fallen asleep. Fortunately, the child was quite well behaved. In the past few days when they were locked up, Mo Jingli came to visit a few times. Coincidentally, the child was asleep and did not anger the person who had obviously gone crazy. She lowered her head and counted the days. Tomorrow was the first birthday banquet of the little heir and princess of the Prince Ding mansion. Princess Anxi knew that whatever Mo Jingli wanted to do, he would do it in the next 2 days. She sighed softly and looked at the baby in her arms. "Baby, don't be afraid. No matter what happens, Mother will protect you. A tall figure appeared at the entrance of the cave. Mo Jingli walked in, his entire body brimming with anger. He glared at Princess Anshi furiously. You're so carefree. Princess Anshi looked up at him and said indifferently, what else can I do when I'm locked up here? You've never been here at this time. What's the matter? Mo Jingli sneered and said, the people of the Prince Ding mansion found my hiding place. But you don't have to be happy. Even so, they can't find this place. Princess Anshi said, I'm not happy. She could not relax for a moment until the child was out of danger. Naturally, she could not be happy. Mo Jingli snorted with satisfaction and said fiercely, get up and come with me. Princess Anshi was stunned and asked in confusion, where are we going? What? Are you addicted to being here? Don't you want to see your husband? Mo Jingli sneered. Give me the child. Princess Anshi's expression changed. She hurriedly put the child behind her and said angrily, don't even think about it. I'll say it again. Give me the child. Mo Jingli said in a low voice. Impossible. What do you want my child for? Princess Anshi said warily. Mo Jingli did not argue with her. He directly went to take the child. Princess Anshi wasn't a weak woman who couldn't even trust a chicken. Naturally, she wouldn't submit so easily. But she was holding the child in one hand. She had been locked up here for a few days and had not eaten much. Her physical strength was weak. After a few rounds, Mo Jingli subdued her and took the child from her. Shaw, Princess Anshi cried anxiously. Mo Jingli. What do you want? Give the child back to me. Mo Jingli held the child and glanced at Princess Anshi indifferently. If he dares to act rashly again, I'll strangle him to death. Princess Anshi immediately froze. She did not dare to move her eyes and stared at Mo Jingli's hand on the child's neck. She was afraid that he would hurt the child if he used too much force. Seeing her like this, Mo Jingli nodded with satisfaction and said with a smile, very good. Someone will disguise you later and take you into the city. You'd better behave and not cause any trouble. Otherwise, I'll make sure you see this little thing die miserably. Princess Anshi's expression changed and her face turned as pale as paper. Don't hurt Shaw, He's innocent. If you have any problems, come at me. Mo Jingli glanced at her and said with a smile, don't worry. As long as you're obedient, I won't hurt the child. What a cute child. My son. I've never seen him when he was this old. Princess Anshi composed herself and said in a low voice, you'd better keep your word. Mo Jingli smiled coldly. He turned and walked out with the child. Soon, he disappeared into the cave. Princess Anshi stared blankly at the entrance of the cave. After a while, she finally came back to her senses. Shaw, don't be afraid. Mother will save you. Princess Anshi murmured softly. A determined light flashed in her eyes. Two men in plain clothes rushed in from the entrance of the cave. They walked up to Princess Anshi and said in a low voice, Your Highness, His Majesty ordered us to disguise you. Princess Anshi glanced at them coldly and said in a low voice, Let's begin. Chapter 1076. On this day, Glass City was exceptionally lively. The last time it was so lively was a year ago at Master Qingyun's birthday banquet. But at that time, most of the guests who came to the banquet came with ulterior motives. But this time, they were all in a different mood. There was a complicated feeling of awe and admiration, as well as the vague intention of showing goodwill. In the past year, whether it was the Prince Ding mansion or the entire world, there had been earth-shaking changes. Anyone with eyes could see that there was no one in the world who could compete with Prince Ding. At least, there wouldn't be anyone in the next 10 years. And everyone couldn't help but worry that when the Prince Ding mansion regained its strength, it would once again send its troops to conquer the world. And when that time came, who would be able to resist the Prince Ding mansion's cavalry? If the allied forces of the three countries had not just been defeated, and if it wasn't for the fact that the difference in power and influence was too great, it would probably be another allied attack. But now, since they didn't have the strength to meet force with force, they could only show weakness. The banquet this time was held in the Prince Ding mansion. Because it was only the children's first birthday banquet, the Prince Ding mansion didn't invite too many guests. The guests were only the envoys of the various countries and the civil and military officials of the Prince Ding mansion. The other famous people of the various countries were not invited, so naturally, there weren't many guests. But the people of Glass City were still lively as if it was a festival. In the inner courtyard of the Prince Ding mansion, the two babies woke up early in the morning and put on new exquisite clothes. Yili carried them and played with Hua Tianxiang and the others who had already arrived. The two Madame Su and Qin Jing were busy with the banquet, so the children could only be left in the care of a few unmarried girls. Mother. Goddess. Xian was wearing a pink dress embroidered with hibiscus. Around her neck was an exquisite jade longevity lock. Around her hands and feet were silver rings. Sitting in Mo Wu Yu's embrace, she was as exquisite and beautiful as the jade girl beside Goddess Guanyin in a painting. Wu Yu smiled as she caressed Xian's little face and said, "Little Xian, mother is busy. I'll come and see you in a while." When she woke up early in the morning and did not see her mother, Xian was unhappy. Mother, when Lin, who was beside her, heard his sister call out, "Mother," he also joined in the commotion. Moreover, Lin was clearly more mobile than his sister. He climbed up from the soft floor and wobbled his way out. Hua Tianxiang hurriedly carried him back. "Lin, be a good boy. Mother will come to see you in a while. Good baby, play with sister first." No matter how lively the front courtyard of the Prince Ding mansion was, with people coming and going, the study in the inner courtyard was as quiet as usual. As the hosts, Mo Xiaoyao and Yili did not go out to receive guests. Instead, they leisurely sat in the study and read. With the Prince Ding mansion's current strength and status, there were very few guests that they could personally receive. Moreover, guests with truly high status would not arrive early. Mo Xiaoyao leisurely flipped through some unofficial history. He half reclined on the couch, his head resting on Yili's leg. His snow-white hair casually fell over Yili's knee, with a few strands falling to the ground. Reporting to Princess, the Queen of Nanzhao has entered the city. At the door, Zhuo Jing calmly reported. Mo Xiaoyao flipped through a page and calmly replied, "Understood. Send someone to keep an eye on her. Save the Queen of Nanzhao when the time is right. Tell them not to act rashly and do their best to ensure the Queen's safety." This subordinate obeys. Yili frowned slightly and said, "What about the little prince?" Qin Feng was silent for a moment, then said in a low voice, "Yes, I haven't seen the little prince. However, we have already placed spies in all the places in Li City where people could be hidden. Therefore, this subordinate suspects that Mo Jingli may have hidden the little heir in a place that we would not suspect." Yili was silent. Of course she knew who Qin Feng was referring to. She lowered her head to look at Mo Xiaoyao. Mo Xiaoyao's eyes were half closed as he leisurely said, "Do what you need to do. You must save the little prince of Nanzhao. Right now, Nanzhao is very important to us." What was important was not Princess Anqi and the little prince, but their identities. In the past few years, the Prince Ding mansion had no plans to send any more troops. But even so, Shi Ling and the Dechu state still needed someone to keep them in check. And in the south, the valiant Nanjiang was naturally the best choice. At least for the next few decades, Nanzhao would be the Prince Ding mansion's ally. This subordinate understands. This subordinate will take his leave. With Mo Xiuyao's declaration, Qin Feng naturally had no more misgivings. He turned and left to handle matters. In the room, Yili calmly said, Mo Jingli definitely has more than just Mo Jingyu under his control. Mo Jingyu had just arrived in Li City and had no foundation in Li City. Mo Jingli could enter and leave Li City without a trace. This was not something that Mo Jingyu could do. There must be someone who was extremely familiar with Li City's environment and various matters helping him in secret. Chapter 1077. Mo Xiuyao smiled faintly, of course. In this world, there are always people with ulterior motives who are waiting to betray you at any time. If not to catch these annoying bugs, why would I keep Mo Jingli here for so long? Will Mo Jingli be able to tell that you went easy on him? Yili asked worriedly. If that was the case, Princess Anxi and the child would be in danger. Mo Xiuyao smiled. If Mo Jingli still wants to do something today, he will come whether he can tell or not. Besides, I'm guessing that he has been blinded by hatred for a long time. Even if I went easy on him, he won't be able to tell. You know him well, Yili said with a frown. Actually, in Yili's view, Mo Jingli's hatred for Mo Xiuyao came out of nowhere. On the battlefield, victory and defeat were common. One had to bear the consequences of victory and defeat. It was unimaginable that Mo Jingli would hate Mo Xiuyao so much that he would lose his mind. Besides, Mo Jingli had fallen to such a state. Shouldn't he be more worried about the Dechu state's Empress Dowager and the imperial family's betrayal and the West Hills' use of him? The Prince Ding mansion shouldn't be on the list. Mo Xiuyao smiled faintly. Of course, he wouldn't tell Yili what he had done to Mo Jingli. Chen Xiufu requests to see the prince's consort. A voice sounded from outside the door. Mo Xiuyao sat up and said coldly, "Come in." The door of the study was pushed open. Chen Xiufu walked in and bowed respectfully, "Greetings to the prince's consort." Yili smiled, "Mr. Xiuding, you don't have to be so courteous. You have just arrived in Glass City and you are already so busy. Thank you for your hard work." Chen Xiufu cupped his hands and said with a smile, "Wang Fei, you're exaggerating. It's my duty, I don't dare to complain." These few days, Chen Xiufu did not have an easy time. Chen Xiufu even regretted that he had been tricked by Su Qingbai to come back with him. Once he reached Glass City, Prince Ding immediately announced that he was appointed as the left prime minister. Immediately, the faces of the aristocratic families of Dechu State, who were originally polite to him, changed. It was also true that the power of the military generals in King Ding's residence was held in the hands of the Mo family's military generals who were loyal to King Ding. As for the two positions that represented the highest civil officials, one was occupied by the eldest young master of the Su family, while the other was taken advantage of by him, an outsider from Xiling. How could this not anger the people who had been secretly scheming against each other these days? However, after being disciplined by Prince Ding, these people naturally did not dare to talk about Prince Ding's nepotism. Therefore, all their dissatisfaction was directed at him as the left prime minister. A strong dragon could not suppress a local snake. Although Chen Xiufu's abilities were not ordinary, he was still an outsider who had just arrived in Glass City. It was easy to imagine how difficult these few days were. Sometimes, Chen Xiufu could not help but suspect that Prince Ding had appointed him as the left prime minister to suppress these old aristocratic families of Dechu State. At the same time, it also prevented him, as the left prime minister, from colluding with these people. However, no matter why Prince Ding did this, Chen Xiufu knew that he would accept the position of left prime minister. It was not for power, nor was it because of Prince Ding's pressure. It was because only by standing higher could he realize his dreams and ambitions. What's the matter, left prime minister? He was different from Yi Li. Other than people who were close to him like Su Qingchen or old confidants of the Prince Ding mansion, Mo Xiaoyao had always called people by their names or titles. This made people feel the difference between close and distant. At first, it might make people feel uncomfortable, but it also made people more cautious. This meant that Prince did not treat you as a true confidant. People with ambition would naturally work harder to improve themselves, and those who wanted to dawdle would restrain themselves. More importantly, this also showed Prince Ding's high status and power. It made people want to submit to him involuntarily. Chen Xiufu nodded and said, reporting to Prince, Genom of Gojoseon of Shilling requests an audience. Mo Xiaoyao raised his eyebrows and said, Leitingfeng. Why is he here now? As soon as he finished speaking, Mo Xiaoyao's heart moved and said, Murongshen and Marquis Nan. Chen Xiufu smiled and said, yes, congratulations Prince. I just received news that General Murong and Marquis Nan have been unstoppable. They are now approaching the border city of Shilling. The Shilling army has also been completely withdrawn. Hearing this news, not only Mo Xiaoyao but also Yi Li's mood became better. She smiled and said, it is indeed good news. If it were other officials, they would inevitably say a few words of flattery at this time. They would say that such good news came from the birthday banquet of the Crown Prince and Princess. The Crown Prince and Princess had great fortune and so on. But Chen Xiufu would not. First, his character did not allow it. Second, Chen Xiufu was originally from Shilling. These flattering words would be too cold and heartless for him to say. Therefore, Chen Xiufu only silently waited for Mo Xiaoyao and Yi Li's decision. Mo Xiaoyao stood up and said with a smile, very well, please invite Genom of Gojoseon in. Speaking of which, Li, the Chu state sent a message and asked them to send someone to discuss the issue of the 300,000 troops. Although it was the Chu state's troops that drove away Shiling's troops, Mo Xiaoyao did not intend to give up the land north of Yunlan River to the Chu state. If it were not for Murongshen and Marquis Nan, a mere 300,000 troops would be nothing more than food for Shilling. Since he had put in the effort, he naturally could not go without benefits. Although the Chu state had Mo Jingyu, in Mo Xiaoyao's eyes, Mo Jingyu was almost a dead man. Naturally, the Chu state needed to send someone else to negotiate. Yi Li nodded and said, I understand. Prince Ding, Princess, Sir Xiuding. Leitingfeng stepped into the parlor outside the study and calmly nodded to the two. His expression was so calm that it was impossible to tell that he had just received the news of Shiling's defeat. Yi Li smiled and nodded, Genom of Gojoseon, there is no need to be so polite. Please sit. Leitingfeng sat down and glanced at Chen Xiufu who was sitting on the left with a complicated expression. This person was originally one of Shiling's top Confucian scholars. His ability, wisdom, and ideas were all top-notch. It was a pity that he had not achieved anything important in Shilling for decades. Who would have thought that in just a few years after the fall of Emperor of Shilling City, he would be promoted to the position of left Prime Minister of Prince Ding Mansion? Should it be said that Mo Xiaoyao appointed people based on their merits, or were the others blind? Genom of Gojoseon, what's the matter? Mo Xiaoyao leaned back in his chair and asked leisurely. Leitingfeng smiled bitterly and helplessly in his heart. Compared to Mo Xiaoyao, his aura was weaker. Furthermore, he was the one who had a request, so he had to lower himself even more by taking the initiative to visit. But thinking of the news that had just come back from the battlefield, Leitingfeng knew that he had to put down his pride. Now, there were only the 300,000 soldiers of the Chu state and Marquis Murongshen and Marquis Nan on the border of Shilling. But now that the war in the Central Plains had been settled, if Mo Xiaoyao was willing, he could send the cavalry and generals of the Mahist army to the south to reinforce Murongxin and Marquis Nan. At that time, it would really be a disaster for Xiling. Saluting, Lei Tingfeng said in a low voice, "To be honest, I came to disturb Prince and Princess Consort today because of the truce between our two armies." Prince and Princess Consort must have received the battle report from the front lines. The Xiling army has already retreated to the border between Xiling and Dechu State. Chapter 1078. Mo Xiaoyao nodded, frowning as he said, "A truce between the two armies is naturally a good thing. These past few years of continuous campaigns have caused the common people to suffer unspeakably. Genom of Gojoseon has the intention to quell the war, and I am very happy. However, the ones fighting the Western Tomb are the troops of the Dechu State. I'm afraid that this matter will only be settled after a meeting with King Yu of the Dechu State." Lei Tingfeng raised his eyebrows, looking at Mo Xiaoyao as he said seriously, "Why is Prince Ding like this? You and I both understand, although the ones fighting are the troops of Southern Chu, isn't it still up to Prince Ding to decide whether to fight or to make peace? Moreover, I'm afraid that King Yu won't have the chance to discuss this matter with you and me. Currently, the affairs of the Western Tomb State are busy, and I can't wait for the time when Southern Chu sends out an envoy. I hope that His Highness Prince Ding will be magnanimous enough to forgive us." Mo Xiaoyao sized up Lei Tingfeng with interest for a while, before smiling and saying, "It looks like Genom of Gojoseon is really well informed." Lei Tingfeng said with an indifferent smile, "Prince Ding also knows of the relationship between the Emperor of Xiling and the Infinite Boundless Mountain. Naturally, he has some special channels for information." Mo Xiaoyao nodded absent-mindedly, saying, "Since Genom of Gojoseon has this sincerity, I naturally don't want to cause any more trouble. However, there are still some things that we need to make clear in advance." Lei Tingfeng frowned slightly. "Our army will completely withdraw from the Dechu State. In addition, I's information on the Dechu State and Mo Jingli can also be given to Prince Ding. I wonder if His Highness Prince Ding has any other requests." Mo Xiaoyao raised his eyebrows and smiled. "Well, of course it's compensation. The South is rich, and West Hill has benefited a lot from the Central Plains over the years. Has Genom of Gojoseon never thought of compensating the people of the Central Plains?" Lei Tingfeng looked at Mo Xiaoyao's carefree little face in silence. Actually, Lei Jinting and Lei Tingfeng were wrong to say that the West Hill had treated the people of the Central Plains. After all, Xiling and the northern tribes were different. Although they belonged to two different countries, they were of the same origin. Moreover, Lei Jinting had always treated the place as his own territory. In terms of intelligence, Lei Jinting's ability was not something Mo Jingli or Mo Jingqi could compare to. Therefore, in general, the lives of these people were not bad. However, Lei Tingfeng was the one who had lost the war and was the one who had taken the initiative to invade. As the victim and the victor, he had no reason to refuse the compensation. Taking a deep breath, Lei Tingfeng lowered his eyes and said, "West Hill can compensate the Prince Ding mansion with 30 million taels of silver." Mo Xiaoyao shook his head. 80 million taels. Most of West Hill's silver mines are in the south. West Hill should be able to afford this, right? Lei Tingfeng's expression changed. He shook his head and said, "At most 40 million taels." Mo Xiaoyao naturally understood the logic of asking for a sky-high price and asking for a low price. He tilted his head and smiled at Yi Li, then raised his hand to Lei Tingfeng and said, 70 million taels. No, 45 million taels. Prince Ding, West Hill cannot afford a higher price. If you really can't. I can't do anything. What he meant was that Prince Ding's price was too high. If West Hill could not afford it, then they might as well fight to the death. Mo Xiaoyao looked at Yi Li and Qin Xiufu with some regret. He smiled and said, well, let's round it up. 50 million taels. Lei Tingfeng's face was livid. He said in a low voice, okay, pay it over 3 years. Mo Xiaoyao was not short of money. 3 years was not a long time, so he was not in a hurry. He nodded with satisfaction and said, no problem. Then I thank Genom of Gojosian for your understanding. I will immediately order Murongshin and Marquis Nan to withdraw their troops. I hope Westhill will also abide by the agreement. Of course. Lei Tingfeng said in a low voice. Lei Tingfeng agreed readily. Mo Xiaoyao was also in a good mood. He nodded with satisfaction and said, great. In that case, let's leave the rest of the trivial matters to the subordinates. Let Minister Suo be in charge of this matter. Qin Xiufu was stunned. He quickly stood up and said, yes, sir. Qin Xiufu understood that this was trust in him, and also a test for him. The matter of negotiating with Westhill was left to him, a Westhill citizen, to be in charge. Even if Prince Ding had expressed his trust in him to the officials of Glass City and entrusted him with important tasks. Lei Tingfeng was stunned. He looked at Qin Xiufu and nodded, in that case, I will have to trouble Minister Qin. Today, the Prince Ding mansion is busy. I will take my leave first. Qin Xiufu said indifferently, Genom of Gojosian is too serious. Mo Xiaoyao nodded and said, then I will not accompany Genom of Gojosian. Minister Zhua, I will leave Westhill's matters to you. Yes, Genom of Gojosian, please. Lei Tingfeng and Qin Xiufu said their goodbyes and left the flower hole. Yi Li looked at the empty doorway and said indifferently, Lei Tingfeng, compared to Lei Jinting, he is still a little inexperienced. Mo Xiaoyao smiled and said, it is already not bad. He can't become the second Lei Jinting in the border city after Lei Jinting's death. Also, he can't become Lei Jinting. But, to be able to endure, is already not bad. Lei Jinting had fought his way out of the many princes of the late Westhill Emperor. Even though he did not sit on the throne, he took over the power after the late Westhill Emperor passed away. This ability was not something that Lei Tingfeng, who had been pampered and protected by Lei Jinting since he was young, could have. It was already very good that Lei Tingfeng could hold his ground at the crucial moment and endure when he needed to. In time, he should become a good lord of preservation. But to be as awe-inspiring as when Lei Jinting was still around, it would be a little difficult. Li, why do you care about how he is? You should think about how we are going to spend the 40 million compensation from Westhill. Mo Xiaoyao hugged Yi Li and laughed softly. 40 million was definitely not a small amount for the Prince Ding mansion or Westhill. Otherwise, Lei Tingfeng would not have insisted on paying it off in 3 years. With this money, the Prince Ding mansion's losses from the war over the past few years would basically be covered. Not to mention the territory under the Prince Ding mansion's control today, which was close to 4/5 of the former De Chu state's territory and 1/3 of Westhill's territory. Now, the Prince Ding mansion's area was larger than the existing Westhill and De Chu states combined. Now that everything had been temporarily settled, all the benefits had been taken by the Prince Ding mansion. Yi Li looked curiously at Mo Xiaoyao and asked, how do you want to spend it? The war compensation was naturally put into the Prince Ding mansion's treasury. Obviously, Mo Xiaoyao had no room to spend it however he wanted. Yi Li and Mo Xiaoyao had always separated public from private matters. Even if the entire Prince Ding mansion belonged to them, the two of them would never use the money in the public account for personal use. Fortunately, the two of them were not people who liked extravagance, so they never had to worry about money. Mo Xiaoyao played with Yi Li's hair. Thinking about Yi Li's words, he felt a bit helpless. I want to build a beautiful palace for Miss Li. Seeing his dejected appearance, Yi Li couldn't help but smile. A few days ago, you said that you would accompany me to go sightseeing in a few years. When your palace is built, who will live in it? Mo Xiaoyao raised his head to look at her and said seriously, I want to give Miss Li the most magnificent and exquisite palace, the most beautiful clothes and jewelry, and the most exquisite delicacies. As long as Li wants it, I will find it for Miss Li. Yi Li smiled at him and said with a faint smile, I didn't know that I had the potential to be a beauty who could destroy a country. A waste of money and manpower. I just want our family to be safe and happy together. I just want to be able to do what I want to do. After so many years, seeing that we can live peacefully and happily, I feel like I've already gotten what I want. Miss Li has never told me what she wants. Mo Xiaoyao said with a bit of regret and unwillingness. Miss Li did not have any extravagant desires for power, clothes, and jewelry. Even Mo Xiaoyao was not sure what she liked or hated. This was something that Prince Ding was always worried about. Because what I want, you've already given me. Yi Li said with a faint smile. Given you? Mo Xiaoyao was a bit confused. Yi Li leaned into his embrace and said softly, a lifetime, a generation, a pair. Only this is what I want. Mo Xiaoyao stilled. He raised a hand to tightly wrap around her slender waist and said in a low voice, a lifetime, a generation, a pair. Mo Xiaoyao, in this life, only has Miss Li, there was no oath or pledge of eternal love. Mo Xiaoyao just said it lightly. It was like a simple statement, but it was more comforting than any oath. Yi Li nodded slightly, I know. I also feel the same. Qin Xiufu accompanied Lei Tingfeng out of the study. The two walked side by side. Lei Tingfeng looked at Qin Xiufu beside him and couldn't help but smile. It seems that Mr. Xiuding is greatly valued by Prince Ding and Wang Fei in the Prince Ding mansion. Qin Xiufu said seriously, Qin Xiuding is very grateful for Prince and Wang Fei's kindness. Lei Tingfeng thought for a moment and asked with a smile, if I am willing to make you the Prime Minister of West Hill, would you be willing to deign to return to West Hill and assist I? Qin Xiufu looked at him calmly for a moment and shook his head gently, a loyal minister will not serve two masters. Qin Xiuding does not dare to claim to be loyal, but I am also not a two-faced and indecisive person. Qin Xiuding does not dare to accept Genom of Gojoseon's kindness. Lei Tingfeng was originally just testing him. Naturally, he didn't expect Qin Xiufu to change sides and return to West Hill so easily. But Lei Tingfeng felt a little uncomfortable after being rejected so cleanly by Qin Xiufu. He stopped and looked at Qin Xiufu, asking, does Mr. Xiuding have any advice on the current situation of West Hill? This, you should be able to say. Qin Xiufu hesitated for a moment and finally said, a ruler is not a ruler. A minister is not a minister, or a minister is not a minister, or a minister is strong and a master is weak. This is not the way to go in the long run. Genom of Gojoseon should make plans early. Lei Tingfeng was stunned and wanted to ask again, but Qin Xiufu didn't intend to say anything more. He turned sideways and raised his hand to Lei Tingfeng, Genom of Gojoseon, please. Lei Tingfeng could only suppress the questions in his heart and nodded, Prime Minister Qin, please. Chapter 1079. Qin Xiufu and Lei Tingfeng walked out of the gate, and two people appeared at the corner of the corridor. One of the two men was dressed in snow-white clothes, while the other was dressed in fiery red clothes. Feng Zhiyao looked at the place where the two men stood and frowned. Prince gave Mr. Xiuding the matter of West Hill to handle. Will there be any problem? It was not that he did not believe in Qin Xiufu's loyalty to the Prince Ding mansion, but Qin Xiufu was originally from West Hill. It was more troublesome to give this matter to him than to an ordinary subordinate of the Prince Ding mansion. Qin Xiufu might be put in an awkward position. Su Qingchen shook his head slightly and said indifferently, with Mr. Xiuding's ability, it is not difficult to handle this matter. His character is absolutely trustworthy. Therefore, Prince Ding handed this matter to him to handle. As long as he can handle this matter well, he will be able to sit firmly in the position of left Prime Minister. No one can say anything. Feng Zhiyao nodded. Anyway, he was far inferior to Mo Xiaoyao and Su Qingchen when it came to guessing people's minds. Since these two people felt that there was no problem, naturally there was no problem. The week of catching is about to begin, but these two parents are missing. Let's go and remind them. Otherwise, the guests will wait for a long time. Su Qingchen smiled faintly and said, "They are in the study. I will go to the inner yard to bring Lin, and Xan out. I will have to trouble you to inform them." Feng Zhiyao watched Mr. Qingchen leave and shrugged. He turned and walked in the direction of the study. The Prince Ding Mansion's week of catching was set at noon after lunch. After the guests came to the mansion to watch the two little princes and the little princess's week of catching, they could directly participate in the evening banquet after a short rest. In fact, for one-year-old children, the so-called evening banquet was not important. Those who participated were all adults. For them, the most important thing was catching. In the inner courtyard, Hua Tianxiang and the others were circling around the two babies. Because they were worried that the babies would be sleepy, they had coaxed them to sleep in the morning. When Su Qingchen arrived, the two babies had just woken up and were full of energy. Especially the more lively Lin, he was crawling here and there. He even wanted to climb up and down. The girls and the child's wet nurse could only keep an eye on him, afraid that he would accidentally bump into something. Xan, on the other hand, was quite quiet. She just sat on the soft couch obediently and watched her brother walk around on the floor. She clapped her little hands and cheered as she crawled around. Hearing his sister's voice, Lin became even more excited and began to toss and turn even more violently. "Ya. Ninth, uncle." On the soft couch, Xan pointed at the door and called out happily. Everyone looked at the door and saw Su Qingchen standing at the door looking at Xan with a smile. "Mo Wu Yu pinched Xan's little face and smiled, "Little girl, when the time comes, you'll be smart enough to call me uncle and recognize people." Su Qingchen came in and bent down to carry Xan. He smiled and said, "Xan, are you calling uncle?" He. For a long time. Uncle. Xan obviously liked this uncle of hers very much. She sat in Su Qingchen's arms and giggled non-stop. Lin looked at his sister and then at Su Qingchen who was standing in front of him. He walked over shakily and tugged at Su Qingchen's clothes. "Hug, sister." Su Qingchen looked at Xan in his arms and then at Lin, who was tugging at his clothes. His face stiffened. Everyone looked at the elegant young Master Qingchen carrying a child in one hand and another child tugging at his clothes at his feet. They suddenly felt that this scene was funny no matter how they looked at it. Young Master Qingchen and the matter of carrying a child seemed to be completely unrelated. Mo Wu Yu leaned on Hua Tianxiang's shoulder and covered his mouth to stifle his laughter. Su Qingchen looked at the two babies in front of him helplessly. Although young Master Qingchen was famous, Su Qingchen's children were not very popular. For example, Su Zhirue from the Su family and Ling Junhan, who was like a little demon, did not like to get close to Su Qingchen. However, it was clear that the children of the Prince Ding mansion would like this uncle very much. Su Qingchen could only put Xan down helplessly. He squatted down and hugged the two babies in his arms. The excited babies smiled and comforted him. "Big brother, why are you here too?" At the door, Yili looked at everyone with a smile. Behind him, Mo Xiaoyao glanced at the two children who were playing happily in Su Qingchen's arms. He walked forward and reached out to Xan. Xan. Xian blinked her bright eyes and smiled innocently at Mo Xiuyao. Daddy, hug. Nyang nyang. Mo Xiuyao carried his daughter in his arms proudly. Lin leaned in Su Qingqian's arms and blinked at Mo Xiuyao. He pouted and turned around to face Mo Xiuyao with his butt. Children, especially children who had been together all the time, would always want to do whatever one of them did. Lin might not really like Mo Xiuyao hugging him, but seeing that Mo Xiuyao only hugged his sister and ignored him, he still felt unhappy. Mo Xiuyao bent down and picked Lin up from Su Qingqian's arms. He smiled and said, "Little brat, you know how to be jealous of your sister at such a young age." Lin didn't feel uncomfortable being picked up by his clothes. Instead, he shook his little body and giggled. Mo Xiuyao had always been gentle and loving when he carried his daughters, but he wasn't so polite when he carried a boy. Even Mo Xiaobao was carried around when he was young. Yili stepped forward and took Lin from his arms. She glanced at him reproachfully before looking at Su Qingqian with a smile. "Big brother, are you free now? I didn't expect you to come here." Su Qingqian glanced at Mo Xiuyao unhappily and said, "How could I be free? Father, second uncle, and chief steward Mo are watching outside. I came in to rest for a while. Also, the auspicious hour is about to arrive. I came to see if Lin and Xian are ready." Mo Xiuyao didn't mind. What do they need to prepare? Wasn't it just a matter of putting things on the table and letting them grab whatever they wanted? Su Qingqian smiled but didn't say anything. She walked to the side and sat down. She looked around the room and asked, "Aren't Xiaobao and the others here?" Hua Tianxiang said, "They just said it was boring in the inner courtyard and wanted to go out and watch the fun." Su Qingqian frowned and nodded. "Tell them to be careful. There are a lot of people today." Mo Xiuyao smiled. "I sent people to follow them. Nothing will happen." Not long after, the auspicious hour arrived. The ceremony was set to be held in the main hall of the Prince Ding Mansion's front yard. When Mo Xiuyao and Yili arrived with the two babies, the main hall was already filled with guests. Lei Dingfeng, Mo Jingyu, Yelu Hong, and the other envoys were all present. Even Pu A, who had just been injured and was worried about the safety of Princess Anxi and the little prince, was present. There were also the civil and military officials of the Prince Ding Mansion. As long as they were in Glass City, they were all high-ranking officials. Naturally, the one sitting at the head of the table was the white-haired Sir Qingyun. Seeing Yili and Mo Xiuyao arrive together, everyone hurriedly stood up to greet them. Chapter 1080. Grandfather. Yili walked in front of Master Qingyun and lightly smiled. Master Qingyun smiled as he took Lin from her hands and smiled. "I haven't seen you for a month. These two children have grown up a bit." Yili nodded and smiled. "Children grow up quickly. It won't be long before they can run around. Lin call me Tai Gong." Although Lin was still young, he was very clever. In the past year, he had seen Master Qingyun quite a bit, so he naturally had an impression of this white-bearded old man. He happily grabbed Master Qingyun's white beard and called out, "Tai Gong." Master Qingyun's wrinkled face also revealed a kind smile. "Good child, Lin is obedient, Tai Gong." Xian, who was in Mo Xiuyao's embrace, was not to be outdone. The smile on Master Qingyun's face deepened. Whether it was the Su family or the Prince Ding Mansion, girls were very rare. Naturally, they were loved even more. Master Qingyun repeatedly nodded and said, "Good child, Lin and Xian are both very good." Master Qingyun took out a pair of jade pendants and gave one to Lin and Xian. Yili lowered her head to look. It was a pair of Qi Lin and Phoenix jade pendants. The jade was the highest quality mutton fat white jade. It was completely white and lustrous without any impurities. The carving was very exquisite and Yili felt that it was very familiar. Yili remembered that she also had a jade pendant like this. However, it was made of green jade and carved with magnolia flowers. It was given to her by her grandfather when she was born. It was said that her grandfather personally carved it. Everyone only knew that Master Qingyun was extremely talented, but they didn't know that Master Qingyun was also proficient in many other skills. Even the art of carving that normal scholars would not be interested in could be called a master. These two jade pendants were clearly carved by Master Qingyun himself. Master Qingyun was now over 80 years old. It was not easy for him to carve these two exquisite jade pendants. Yili's eyes were slightly red. She looked at Master Qingyun and said in a low voice, "Grandfather, Lin, and Xan are still young. You don't have to." Master Qingyun shook his head. As he played with Lin in his arms, he said, "It's not good for children to carry ancient jade around. This jade is not bad. It's perfect to make a jade pendant for the two children. What's wrong with that?" Xan was still in Mo Xiaoyao's hands. She held the jade pendant in one hand and waved at Master Qingyun excitedly, "Grandpa. Great-grandpa. Xin hug." As she spoke, she kicked her legs and wanted to walk towards Master Qingyun. Mo Xiaoyao had no choice but to place her on Mr. Qingyun's couch. Fortunately, the couch was very wide. Because Master Qingyun was old, he had specially laid out a thick cushion, so he didn't have to worry about her bumping into anything. Seeing his great-granddaughter being so close to him, even Mr. Qingyun couldn't help but smile. The people sitting below looked at this family and couldn't help but feel emotional. Whether it was Yili, Mo Xiaoyao, or the Su family, they were all very eye-catching people. Now that so many people were standing around Master Qingyun and laughing, it made people feel that the heavens really were biased. Looking at the two little children sitting next to Master Qingyun, everyone couldn't help but reveal an expression of jealousy and envy. Yili, who was standing beside Mr. Qingyun, was stunned when she looked down. She saw that in an inconspicuous corner not far from the palace, Yi Wenhua was standing there alone. His expression was a bit complicated as he looked at her. Or it could be said that he was looking at Lin, who was holding her hand and babbling non-stop. Ever since Yi Wenhua came to Glass City, he rarely went out. He rarely even saw outsiders, so there weren't many people who could recognize him. Seeing that Yili was stunned, Mo Xiaoyao also looked over. Naturally, he also saw Yi Wenhua. Gently hugging Yili, Mo Xiaoyao said softly, "Li, if you have anything to say, just say it to him." Mo Xiaoyao didn't really like or dislike Yi Wenhua. The most he disliked was that he felt that Yili was wronged by Yi Wenhua. Although it couldn't be said that it was all because of Yi Wenhua, at least Yi Wenhua, as a father, didn't treat Yili well. In these few years, Yi Wenhua had been well-behaved in Glass City. He didn't use his identity as Princess Ding's father to have any delusions. Therefore, Mo Xiaoyao's attitude towards him was a bit better. Occasionally, during festivals, he would have people send some gifts to the Yi family. After all, no matter how close Yili was to the Su family, her surname was still Yi. Compared to her family in the Prince Ding mansion who was poor and couldn't make a living, spending some money to let Yi Wenhua enjoy his old age was obviously better for Yili's reputation. Of course, this was on the premise that Yi Wenhua was well-behaved and knew when to advance or retreat. Yili sighed slightly and nodded. Towards Yi Wenhua, this father, she really didn't have any feelings. No matter if it was love or hate, she didn't have any feelings. She just felt sorry for her mother. Yili's impression of Yi Wenhua couldn't even compare to her parents in her previous life who had been together for more than 20 years. Even though her parents in her previous life were just as busy, they didn't spend much time together when they were young. After entering the military academy, they rarely saw each other once a year. However, they still left a deeper impression on her than Yi Wenhua. Father. In the quiet side hall, Yili calmly looked at Yi Wenhua, who had already aged a little. Yi Wenhua was only in his early 50s, but his hair was already white. He was wearing an inconspicuous scholar's robe. Compared to more than 10 years ago when he was in Chujing City, he looked more like a scholar. They hadn't seen each other for more than a year, and Yi Wenhua had also aged a lot. Yi Yu and Yi Ying had passed away in the past year. These two were Yi Wenhua's beloved daughters. No matter what, he couldn't help but feel sad. Li. Yi Li. Seeing Yi Li walk in, Yi Wenhua looked a little embarrassed. He used to think that his first wife's daughter was inconspicuous. He used to hate her. He used to think that he didn't have a daughter. Now, she had grown into a legendary woman who was admired by the whole world without him as her father. Actually, as a father, he couldn't help much. Yi Wenhua smiled bitterly. Father, please sit down. Yi Li said softly. Speaking of which, this time, the subordinates in the Prince Ding mansion didn't think it through. They forgot to send an invitation to the Yi family for Lin, and Axayan's first birthday party. Of course, a large part of this was caused by Yi Li and Mo Xiuyao's attitude. Yi Wenhua nodded and sat down. Immediately, a maid came over to serve tea and then left. The two of them drank tea in silence for a while. Yi Li then asked, "Long time no see. Father, how are you?" "Good, good. Your grandmother is also very good." Yi Wenhua nodded. Yi Li smiled faintly. If she didn't have any feelings for Yi Wenhua, then she didn't have any feelings for old Madame Yi either. After all, Yi Wenhua loved her when she was young. After her mother passed away, he would occasionally help her. However, old Madame Yi didn't like her mother when her mother was still alive. When she looked at her, there were no feelings other than calculation and indifference in her eyes. Yi Wenhua also understood that Yi Li wasn't interested in this topic. He raised his hand and took out a wooden box from his sleeve. He put it on the table and said, "Today is the two children's birthday. This is my gift to them." Chapter 1081. Yi Li took the wooden box from Qin Feng and opened it. She looked at Yi Wenhua in surprise. There was a piece of warm jade and a pair of jade bells in the old box carved from red sandalwood. She had seen the warm jade before. It was said to be a family heirloom of the Yi family. It was a very valuable piece of warm jade. Old Madame Yi used it to show off. It was said that the ancestors of the Yi family were from a prestigious family. Later, when Wang gave birth to Yi Rong, Yi Wenhua didn't give it to her even though she wanted it. Although she had never seen the jade bells before, they were definitely more valuable than the warm jade. The delicate bells were carved out of white suet jade. There were 2 jade beads in the hollow and delicate patterns. They jingled when shaken gently. It was very pleasant to hear. "This is too valuable," Yi Li said. The Yi family was no longer the Yi family in Chujing City. Moreover, the Yi family was not rich. The 2 gifts that Yi Wenhua gave were probably more valuable than all the assets of the Yi family combined. Yi Wenhua waved his hand and rejected the box that Qin Feng brought back. He said, "I only have these 2 things that I can take out to show people. If I give them to the 2 children, they can be playthings. If I leave them in the Yi family, they will be gone soon. Moreover, these jade bells were left behind by your mother. Just give them to Axayan, to play with." Seeing that Yi Wenhua was so insistent, Yi Li had no choice but to accept them. She said softly, "I thank you on behalf of the 2 children." Yi Wenhua shook his head and didn't say anything. Yili thought for a while and asked, "Is Su-yun okay?" When Su Qingchen came back from Jiangnan, she brought Mo Su-yun back. But Mo Su-yun was weak and timid. No one from the Prince Ding mansion or the Su family took care of him. Yili had discussed with Su Qingchen to send the children to the Yi family. Yi Wenhua sighed, "He is okay." He had changed his name to Yi Su. That child had suffered a lot and was not very courageous. And his body. Mo Suyun's body was really ruined beyond recognition. Even if Shenyang and Dr. Lin personally checked his pulse, they both shook their heads, indicating that they were not sure that Mo Suyun could live past the age of 20. In the past 6 months, Mo Wuyu would visit him every half a month to check on him. It was just a matter of dragging it out. Mo Wuyu didn't know that Mo Suyun wasn't Mo Jingqi's son, so he pitied his half-brother. Yili said, "If his body needs any medicine, just let Worryless come to the Prince Ding mansion to get it." Yi Wenhua nodded. The father and daughter were speechless. After a long while, Yi Wenhua said in a low voice, "Li Ing Her's funeral." Yili looked down and said softly, "Fourth sister didn't want to leave the Li palace. After she died, Li Wang used the power of the princess to bury her. Now, she bought some land not far from Lishan Academy and is living there." "Thank you, Li Yi Wenhua didn't know what else to say. He could only repeat it. Yili smiled and said lightly, "Don't mention it. He's also my brother. Father, if you have time, you can go and see concubine Zhao and Xian. I also heard that Madame Wang has been making trouble for the past 2 years." Yi Wenhua was stunned and quickly said, "Don't worry. I will control them well. I won't let the Yi family ruin your reputation." Yili shook her head lightly and didn't say anything. Chapter 1082. Princess Consort. Shuijing walked into the side hall and looked at Yili and Yi Wenhua before greeting respectfully. Yili nodded and asked with a smile, "What's the matter?" Shuijing said, "His Highness said that the little heir and little princess's catching ceremony is about to begin and asked the princess to attend." Yili nodded and asked, "Has the heir arrived?" Shuijing shook his head and said, "I haven't seen the heir." Yili helplessly indicated for Shuijing to go find Mo Xiaobao first. She stood up and smiled at Yi Wenhua, "Father, let's go. It's about to start." Yi Wenhua paused and quickly nodded, "All right, let's go." When they entered the main hall, it was already bustling with noise and excitement. The Prince Ding mansion had prepared a large table that was 5 to 6 feet long. There were all kinds of things on it. Su Qingyan and Su Qingfeng each held one in their arms. When they saw Yili walk over, they immediately stretched out their little hands towards Yili happily. Yili smiled and stroked the babies' little faces, asking, "Has it started?" Chief Steward Mo said in a low voice, "The auspicious hour has arrived. The prince and princess can begin to catch the prince." Yili clapped her hands and smiled, "Let them pass." Su Qingyan giggled as he placed Lin on the table. Su Qingfeng also placed Xan on the table. The two babies looked curiously at everything in front of them. Although there were so many pairs of eyes staring at them, the two babies did not have stage fright. Instead, they excitedly fiddled with the things on the table. Xan picked up a small abacus made of gold and curiously fiddled with it. Han Mingxi couldn't help but smile. Could it be that the princess wants to be a wealthy merchant in the future? Before he finished speaking, Xan giggled and quickly stuffed the small abacus into Lin arms. Lin looked at the little toy in his hand suspiciously. He tilted his little head and thought for a moment. Then, he turned his little body and placed the little abacus behind him. Then, he grabbed a book beside him and stuffed it into Xian's arms. Xian did not dare to show weakness. She chuckled as she grabbed a pen not far away and stuffed it into Lin's hands. Thus, under the watchful eyes of the crowd, the two siblings started to play with one another. Feng Zhiyao stared dumbfoundedly at the siblings who were still playing happily in front of him. What are they doing? Yili looked at the small piles of things behind the siblings and couldn't help but smile. She didn't know what they were doing. After thinking about it, Yili clapped her hands and smiled at the two babies. Xian, pick something you like and give it to mother. It wasn't clear whether the two children understood Yili's words or not, but when they saw Yili open her arms, Xian took the lead and got up first after a moment of hesitation. In the future, she will definitely be rich and won't have to worry about anything. Everyone also congratulated Prince Ding and Princess Consort for their good fortune. In the end, only Su Qingyan was forced to help the little princess put away all the things. Because if he didn't put them away, the little princess would lie on a pair of small things and refuse to move. The pregnancy catching ceremony was actually very simple. After the two babies were caught, they were carried down. The guests who had come to watch the ceremony were invited to the garden to enjoy the scenery, drink wine, and chat, while waiting for the evening banquet. The people of the Prince Ding mansion gathered in the reception pavilion. The two babies were still holding their spoils of war and playing happily in the arms of the adults. Su Qingyan had an amused expression as he held Xian. On the table beside him were Xian's spoils of war. Xian was holding an exquisite and gorgeous jewelry box in her hands and studying it attentively. Xiao Bao hasn't returned yet? Yili asked with a frown. Su Qingfeng frowned and said, not yet. Jirue, Junhan, and Qin Lai are also not in the mansion. But they should be fine. If something really happened, the people following them will come back to report. Yili looked at Mo Xiuyao. Mo Xiuyao smiled and nodded, saying, don't worry, Li, Xiao Bao and the others will be fine. Yili nodded and looked at Qin Lai, asking, how is the Queen of Nanzhao? Qin Feng frowned and said, although Princess Anqi has disguised herself, it's not to the extent that we can't recognize her. She is being led around the city. Mo Jingli probably doesn't want to do anything to Princess Anqi. He just wants to use Princess Anqi to divert our attention. Yili pondered for a moment and said, look for an opportunity. No matter what, we should save Princess Anqi first. Princess, something bad has happened. Outside the door, Director Mo hurried in to report. What happened? Mo Xiuyao asked calmly. Chief Steward Mo said in a deep voice, Prince Pu heard about Princess Anqi from somewhere and rushed out with his men to save Princess Anqi. Chapter 1083. Nonsense. Yili frowned. Since the other party dared to strut around the city with Princess Anqi, they would not be unprepared. It was too risky for Pu to rush out like this. After some thought, Yili said, Zhua Jing, take some people and go. No, Li, we'll go ourselves. Mo Xiuyao stood up and took Yili's hand as he spoke softly. Yili frowned slightly. The Prince Ding mansion was currently filled with guests. They needed Prince Ding to oversee things. Moreover, this matter was not serious enough to require Prince Ding and the princess to personally attend to it. Mo Xiuyao smiled and said, let's go. Pu and Princess Anqi are guests. Let's go take a look. Yili sighed helplessly and said, if you say so, then let's go, third brother. Su Qingfeng smiled and said, don't worry, Li, leave the Prince Ding mansion to us. On an inconspicuous street in Glass City. Because it was a special day, Glass City was especially lively. However, some of the more remote streets were even more deserted than usual. By the time Yili and Mo Xiaoyao arrived, the Nanzhao guards that Pu Hua had brought had already started fighting with Mo Jingli's men. Although Mo Jingli did not have many men, each one of them was skilled. The worst thing was that Pu Hua's guards had forced them into a restaurant on the street. They had smashed all the wine in the restaurant. If anyone dared to step into the restaurant, they would immediately set it on fire and perish together with Princess Anxi. Seeing Yili and Mo Xiaoyao arrive, Pu Hua quickly went up to them and anxiously explained the situation. Prince Ding, Princess Ding. Yili didn't look too good either. The current situation wasn't that they couldn't beat these people, but that they were holding back. These people dared to do this because they were prepared to die. As long as they dared to act rashly, these people would ignite their fire seeds, and the entire restaurant, which was almost soaked in strong liquor, would be turned into a sea of fire. If Princess Anxi was hurt, it would be self-defeating and the losses would outweigh the gains. Pu Hua also knew that he was being impulsive, but his wife and son had been missing for so many days. This man, who was not good at patience, had already reached his limit. When he heard about Princess Anxi, how could he hold himself back? Looking at Pu Hua's guilty and vexed expression, Yili sighed softly in her heart. She calmly comforted him, "Don't worry, Wang Fu. The Queen of Nanzhao is blessed. Nothing will happen." Pu Hua nodded and said, "Sorry to trouble you, Princess. Please save Anxi. Don't worry, Prince Ding Mansion. This is Glass City. The Prince Ding Mansion will do its best to protect the Queen." Yili gave Qin Feng a look. Qin Feng nodded and stepped forward, saying in a clear voice, "Everyone inside, listen up. Prince Ding and Princess Ding have personally arrived. Release the Queen of Nanzhao and we can spare your lives." There was a moment of silence inside. A figure appeared at the window on the second floor. He looked down at the people below and said, "We can release Princess Anxi first. Let Prince Ding and Princess Ding come in personally." "Impudent!" Qin Feng said sternly, "How dare you? Do you really think that the Prince Ding Mansion can't do anything to you?" These people obviously knew that they were going to die at this point. Perhaps it was because they had nothing left to lose, but they were bolder. They smiled and said, "We naturally have a way. As long as Prince Ding gives the order to shoot, we can all be killed without a single soldier. No matter, having a queen die with them, it's still worth it." Mo Xiaoyao was about to speak when Yili raised her hand to stop him. She stepped forward and said with a smile, "If I really agree to come up with Prince Ding, would you dare?" The other party was silent. Prince Ding's martial arts were unparalleled. This was something everyone in the world knew. If they really allowed Prince Ding to go up, they really couldn't be sure what would happen. After a moment, the man sneered and said, "Thank you for your reminder, Princess. Then it's fine as long as Princess comes up alone." Although it was rumored that Princess Ding's martial arts were not bad, it was far from the level where ordinary martial arts masters would be afraid of her. They were all first- and second-rate experts. It was naturally not a problem for them to deal with Ding Wangfei. "Okay." Yili smiled. Mo Xiaoyao frowned in displeasure. Even though he knew that Yili had a plan, Mo Xiaoyao was not happy to see Yili take any risks in front of him. Not even for the Queen of Nanzhao. Even if the Queen and Prince of Nanzhao died in Li City, so what? Even if Nanzhao and the Prince Ding Mansion became enemies, they could not do anything to them. Yili gently gripped his hand and said with a comforting smile, "Don't worry, nothing will happen." Mo Xiaoyao pursed his lips and looked at her in displeasure. Yili said with a slight smile, "I promise to come out in 15 minutes. After a moment, Mo Xiaoyao let go and watched as Yili walked into the restaurant. Entering the restaurant, the thick smell of wine hit them in the face. The hall was littered with broken wine jars, and the floor was soaked with wine. Yili strolled up to the second floor and saw a few men staring at her covetously. Princess Anshi sat at a table and looked at her without moving. Her eyes were filled with anxiety. Princess Ding, don't come over. Mo Jingli took Shuo away. Please save Shuo. Yili smiled and said, Princess Anshi, don't worry. Shuo will be fine. Thinking of her son that Mo Jingli had taken away, Princess Anshi's eyes reddened. Princess Ding, don't worry about me. As long as Shuo is fine. Yili sighed. This time, the queen and the prince had suffered an undeserved calamity because of Ding Wangfu. How can this consort not care? Sitting at a table not far from Princess Anshi, Yili calmly looked at the men in front of her. They looked familiar, but she couldn't remember their names. They should be Mo Xiaoyao's guards. She might have met them before. Gentlemen, Mo Jingli's methods are becoming more and more shameless. Using a woman and an innocent baby as hostages. The man in the lead took a step forward and sized Yili up. At this point, who cares if you're presentable or not? Princess Ding dared to risk her life for someone unrelated to her. We admire her. Unfortunately, we are on opposing sides. Please forgive us. Yili looked at him with interest and said with a smile, your words are quite interesting. This consort is surprised that someone like you is still loyal to Mo Jingli. The man smiled bitterly and said, a loyal subject will not serve two masters. Moreover, His Majesty has shown me kindness. Kindness, you are a loyal person. Yili sighed. The man looked at Yili and said, this consort is surprised that you would risk your life alone as the consort. If this consort lit a fire now, it would be more worth it to burn Princess Ding to death than to burn the Queen of Nanzhao. And now, I'm afraid that the consort will be buried with the Queen of Nanzhao. Yili looked at him leisurely and said with a smile, first, are you sure that I won't be able to escape after you light the fire? Second, you took the Queen of Nanzhao to wander around the city for so long. After being surrounded, you put on such a show. Do you really want to kill Princess Anshi first? You know that you will die for sure. If you really want to kill Princess Anshi, why don't you just slit her throat? Then you might be able to fight your way out. Now, I don't know about Princess Anshi, but you all look like you have no way out. Why do you have to do this? The man's eyes darkened. What do you mean? Yili covered her smile and said, don't you understand? I'm advising you to act quickly. The man looked at the woman in white in front of him suspiciously. She was willing to risk her life for Princess Anshi, but advised him to act quickly. This was definitely not what they had expected. However, he had been with Mo Xiaoyao for a long time and had naturally heard about Princess Ding's cunning. Although he couldn't see through Yili's thoughts, he watched Yili's every move cautiously. Yili said with a smile, you don't have to be so nervous. I know that you don't want to kill Princess Anshi at all. You even want her to live as long as possible. The man fell silent. Yili said with a smile, you want to use Princess Anshi to stall me and Prince. Does Mo Jingli have other plans in secret? Is he trying to lure us away? But, does Mo Jingli really think that Prince and I will abandon everything and stay here for Princess Anshi? The man sneered. Princess, you're here now. Isn't that enough? Yili helplessly sighed and said, this imperial concubine came in to tell you that after a quarter of an hour, the secret guards of Prince Ding's residence will begin their assault. The man's face darkened. He said in a low voice, aren't you afraid that I'll kill the Queen of Nanzhao? Yili said, it's important whether she lives or dies. Isn't there an explanation? There are so many guests in the Prince Ding mansion today. How can Prince and I stay here for a long time? Seeing the man staring at her with a serious expression, Yili sat down leisurely. She looked at the furnishings in the restaurant and said casually, "Does Mo Jingli want to cooperate with Mo Jingyu? What do you think Mo Jingyu can do?" Hearing this, the man's expression finally changed. Yili acted as if she didn't see it. She continued, "There are also some old officials and nobles of Dechu State in Glass City who are secretly helping. Even so, what can they do? Every soldier in Glass City is in the hands of Prince Ding Mansion. Can they turn Glass City upside down? Princess Ding is indeed very powerful." The man stared at Yili and said in a low voice, "Princess Ding didn't come here to gossip with us. What does Princess want?" Yili said with a smile, "Release Princess Anshi and I will consider letting bygones be bygones." The man's lips curled into a mocking smile. Obviously, he didn't believe Yili's words at all. Even if he did, he wouldn't consider it. Yili didn't care. She pondered for a moment and said, "The first option is to wait with you for an hour. Release Princess Anshi and I will let you go. The second option, after a quarter of an hour, we will attack the Prince Ding Mansion. You're afraid Princess Anshi will die?" Yili looked at Princess Anshi and said apologetically, "Princess Anshi, don't worry. I swear on the reputation of the Prince Ding Mansion that I will save the little prince." Princess Anshi obviously understood Yili's meaning. She said with a smile, "Princess, you can go now. Let the Prince Ding Mansion's people attack immediately. Waiting a quarter of an hour or half an hour won't make any difference." Yili nodded firmly at Princess Anshi and said, "Okay." Chapter 1084. After hearing Princess Anshi's answer, Yili stood up and prepared to go downstairs. It was as if she didn't care about Princess Anshi's life at all. This kind of reaction made the few men present stunned. After all, they knew that Prince Ding was cold and heartless, but Princess Ding was very easygoing. It was impossible for her to abandon Princess Anshi. "Wait," the man said in a low voice. One of the men guarding the stairs heard his leader's voice and immediately reached out to stop Yili. However, Yili's expression darkened. She raised her hand and grabbed the man's arm. With a twist of her hand, the man who was blocking her path was pushed to the ground with a muffled groan. Yili turned around and looked coldly at the man in black. "I respect your loyalty, but it's best that you stop before going too far." "Wait," the man in black said, "we can let Princess Anshi go, but why should I believe that you won't do anything in an hour?" Yili raised her eyebrows and asked, "What do you want?" The man in black said, "Princess Ding and Prince, please wait here for an hour. After an hour, we'll let Princess Anshi go. In addition, during this hour, you can't see anyone in the Prince Ding Mansion." Yili lowered her eyes and thought for a moment, then nodded, "Okay. Let me take Princess Anshi away first. We'll wait outside." The man in black frowned and wanted to refuse. Yili said indifferently, "You're right. If His Highness and I spend an hour with you, but you burn Princess Anshi in the end, who am I supposed to complain to?" The man hesitated for a long time. Yili looked at his hesitant face, then shook her head and turned to leave. "Princess Ding, come out if you agree. If you don't, stay here. If I don't come out in 15 minutes, Prince Ding will come in personally." She watched as Yili's figure leisurely disappeared at the top of the stairs. The people upstairs looked at each other. "Boss, what should we do?" The leading man in black pondered for a long time before finally sighing and saying, "Let's go out." But what if? What if Princess Ding was lying? They could still hold on to this house that was filled with strong liquor to prevent them from shooting at the rat for fear of breaking the vases. Once they vented their anger, the Mahist army lying in ambush outside would be enough to turn them into hedgehogs. The black-robed man smiled bitterly and helplessly. Princess Ding had already arrived just now. We had already lost by not killing her immediately. Furthermore, Princess Ding was right. How much did the life and death of the Queen of Nanzhao have to do with the Prince Ding mansion? Even if Nanzhao wants to become enemies with the Prince Ding mansion because of this, if they want to cause trouble for the Prince Ding mansion, they have to go through the West Hill and Dechu state first. Moreover, he doubted which country would dare to cause trouble for the Prince Ding mansion. Are we just going to go out like this? The black-robed man gritted his teeth and said, let's gamble that Princess Ding will keep her promise. She will die anyway. If she can delay for an hour for His Majesty, she will be loyal. The others were silent. No matter if it was loyalty or other reasons, they had no way out now that they had come this far. The boss was right. They could not avoid death no matter what. Compared to being burned to death, they would rather die with an arrow through the heart. Outside the restaurant, Yi Li stood beside Emo Xiaoyao. Pu Hua stood behind them and looked inside nervously. After a while, they finally saw Princess Anxi being escorted out of the restaurant slowly. Anxi! Pu Hua called out anxiously. Princess Anxi shook her head to show that she was fine. Emo Xiaoyao glanced at the crowd and said, since they are already out, let her go. The men looked at Emo Xiaoyao warily and did not move. Emo Xiaoyao snorted disdainfully and said, the princess consort has already told I. If I wanted to break the contract, you would be dead the moment you stepped out. Let her go. The black-robed man holding Princess Anxi down paused for a moment, then finally let go of Princess Anxi's hand. As soon as she was free, Princess Anxi rushed over. Pu hugged Princess Anxi excitedly. Anxi, are you okay? I'm fine. Princess Anxi said emotionally. But our child. Shuo is with Mo Jingli. His wife's safe return calmed Pu Hua down. Although he was also worried about his son's disappearance, he looked at Emo Xiaoyao and Yi Li with more respect and confidence. Don't be afraid, don't be afraid. Shuo will be fine. On the side, Emo Xiaoyao pulled Yi Li to a chair that the guards of the Prince Ding mansion had brought over from somewhere. It was rare that Emo Xiaoyao would keep his promise to the enemy. He sat under the faint sunlight and waited for an hour to pass. The black-robed man looked at the white-haired Prince Ding leaning against Princess Ding with his eyes closed. A complicated expression flashed across his face. There was awe, helplessness, regret, and information. In fact, when he decided to go out, he could not be sure that Prince Ding would keep his promise. It was already very good that he was able to resolve the situation like this. At the same time, it also showed the difference between Prince Ding and Prince Li. He knew that if his master Mo Jingli was in this situation, Mo Jingli would never keep his promise. Princess consort, a shadow guard hurried over and said in a low voice, young Master Qingchen has sent someone to ask the prince to return to the residence immediately. Mo Xiaoyao opened his eyes and said calmly, what is it? The shadow guard hesitated for a moment and said in a low voice, the little heir has not been found yet. Mo Xiaoyao sat up and glanced at the group of black-robed men standing not far away and looking at them warily. He looked down calmly and said, I know. Let young Master Qingchen do as he sees fit. This. After all, something had happened to the little heir, but the prince was not moved at all. This made the shadow guard a little worried. But when he met Mo Xiaoyao's calm eyes, the shadow guard's heart trembled. He quickly said, this subordinate understands. This subordinate will take his leave. Hearing that Mo Xiaobao had not been found, Yi Li frowned slightly. She lowered her head and looked at Mo Xiaoyao's hand that was holding hers. It was dry and steady. She couldn't help but relax. She slowly leaned back in her chair and accompanied Mo Xiaoyao as they waited for the time to come. An hour passed by. Some people felt like time had passed by, while others felt like a year had passed. When the time finally came to an end, Mo Xiaoyao pulled Yili and slowly stood up. Big brother Ping Jing looked at the man in black in front of him and said, "I will spare your life. Go back and tell Mo Jingli. Don't forget, his son is still in Ai's hands." With that, Mo Xiaoyao pulled Yili and left without looking back. Looking at Mo Xiaoyao's departing figure, the man in black let out a long sigh. When they were face to face, the pressure that Prince Ding gave off was absolutely unbearable. He raised his hand and wiped his forehead. The sweat on his forehead had already soaked half of his hair. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The sound of arrows piercing through the air rang out. The man in black vigilantly jumped to the side. The moment he landed, an arrow nailed him to the back of his foot. When he turned back, the men who had been following him had all fallen to the ground. Not far away, a man in black holding a bow and arrow sat on the roof. He said calmly, "Don't be afraid. Prince said to spare your life. We won't shoot at you." Chapter 1085. Seeing that person quickly disappear behind the eaves, the black-clothed man only felt his entire body turn cold. After a long while, he turned and madly ran towards the intersection. Mo Xiaoyao and Yili returned to the palace. Su Qingchen was anxiously waiting in the study. "Big brother." Su Qingchen's handsome face was gloomy. He said unhappily, "Why are you only back now?" Mo Xiaoyao said indifferently, "What happened?" Su Qingchen picked up a letter from the table and handed it over, saying, "Xiao Bao has fallen into Mo Jingli's hands." Mo Jingli had someone deliver this letter. Yili took the letter and looked. It was indeed Mo Jingli's handwriting. Between the lines, there was malice and smugness. Su Qingchen sat down, looked at them unhappily and asked, "What happened?" So many people were watching Xiao Bao, how could he still fall into Mo Jingli's hands? Mo Xiaoyao looked at the letter Yili handed over and said calmly, "Don't worry, Xiao Bao will be fine." Su Qingchen looked at Mo Xiaoyao for a long time, then snorted, "You set this up again. Be careful that you don't fall for your own cleverness." Mo Xiaoyao smiled helplessly. "This wasn't set up by me." Mo Xiaoyao looked anxiously at Yili. "Why do I feel so resentful?" Su Qingchen frowned slightly, "Mo Xiao Bao." Mo Xiaoyao blinked innocently. "So, it really had nothing to do with I." Su Qingchen looked at Mo Xiaoyao and sneered, "Just let him do as he pleases, if something happens, brother Qingchen," Mo Xiaoyao said with a faint smile, "Xiao Bao will be 11 soon, he's not a child anymore. If we don't let him do as he pleases, we will never be at ease. Besides, with someone watching him, nothing will happen. If something really happened, there's no way the people around him wouldn't have come back to report." Su Qingchen shook her head helplessly. She sighed and said, "Forget it. Even you, the father, aren't worried." "Why should I be? Big brother is naturally doing this for Xiaobao's sake." Yili smiled faintly and frowned slightly. "I'm also a little worried about little treasure. This pair of father and son, they're really father and son. Usually, they didn't find each other pleasing to the eye, but when it came to serious matters, they would have a kindred spirit that made people hate them." Prince Ding rubbed his nose innocently as his wife vented her anger on him. He decided to record this debt on a certain daring brat. Achoo! Somewhere in a dark corner, a little ghost dressed in an inconspicuous cloth sneezed lightly. Someone immediately covered his nose and whispered, "What are you doing?" In the dim light, a pair of bright eyes appeared. Sorry. I think I caught a cold." It doesn't matter if you're unlucky, but don't drag Qinlai down. Su Jirue, who was also dressed in cloth, said in a low voice. Mo Xiaobao pouted in grievance. I could have gone myself. Why did Qinlai have to go first? Shut up. Su Jirue rolled his eyes impatiently. Don't you know that a gentleman doesn't stand on a collapsing wall? Do you want to be cursed by Uncle Prince Ding when you go back? Mo Xiaobao blinked and looked at Su Jirue. Cousin Jirue, you're being irritable. Su Jirue shot him a glare. He really was crazy to accompany Mo Xiaobao to do such a dangerous thing. Did this madman know how old they were? If Qinlai hadn't gone first, Mo Xiaobao would have walked right into the trap and sent himself into the hands of a madman. Mo Xiaobao felt wronged. It was clearly Qinlai who was too anxious. We already decided to change the plan, but he didn't even discuss it before running away. We still have to work so hard to save him. Su Jirue silently glanced at Mo Xiaobao. After a while, he said, when Aunt gave birth to you, why didn't she just strangle you to death? Mo Xiaobao was the type of person who forgets favors and violates justice. Who did Qinlai take the risk for? Mo Xiaobao laughed very smugly. He rubbed his nose and said, Mother loves me the most. She can't bear to. Su Jirue snorted and ignored him. When you go back and get tortured by Prince Ding's uncle, there will definitely be no one who will pity you. The Su family's little young master silently cursed in his heart. But little young Master Su didn't know that there was a kind of person in this world that was like a cockroach that couldn't be killed. The more they were tortured, the more they would be tortured. Su Jirue, who was completely oblivious to the fact that beside him was a little pervert in the midst of evolving, carefully crawled up, following the dense vines as he slowly moved forward. Right now, the most important matter for them was to find the captured Qinlai, and not to bicker with the heartless Mo Xiaobao here. Mo Xiaobao, who was following behind him, rolled his eyes at the sky. Did Su Jirue know that he was the older brother? Although Su Jirue and Mo Xiaobao were still young, Mo Xiaobao was doted on by the Su family and Prince Ding mansion since he was young. However, he didn't forget what he should learn. And Su Jirue, as Mo Xiaobao's only younger cousin, naturally accompanied Mo Xiaobao to suffer. Therefore, little friend Su Jirue became the second person in the Su family to learn martial arts after Su Qingfeng. Although the two were young, they had the advantage of being taught by famous experts. Even if they couldn't beat them, normal people couldn't catch up. After a long time, the two finally moved to the entrance of the courtyard. Mo Xiaobao looked at the mark left behind by Qinlai and asked with some confusion, "This isn't the Dechu State's post house. Where the hell is this place?" Su Jirue rolled his eyes in annoyance and said, "It seems to be the Zhao family's backyard." Zhao family. It's the Zhao family that fifth uncle said wanted to marry his daughter to Prince Ding's uncle, Zhao Zhifang. The one that even brought a group of people to Lishan Academy to find great-grandfather. Su Jirue said. Mo Xiaobao's eyes turned and finally revealed a strange smile. So it's him. Don't think that Mo Xiaobao only knew how to be mischievous every day. He didn't miss a single thing. At least, Mo Xiaobao clearly remembered who wanted to steal his mother's man. Although he didn't like his annoying father, he didn't have any thoughts of changing him. Even if he did, it would depend on his mother. If his mother didn't say she didn't want him, he would kill whoever dared to steal him. What do you want now? We're here to save Qinlai. Su Jirue said cautiously. Mo Xiaobao looked at the sky. Who said we're here to save Qinlai? If we want to save Qinlai, wouldn't it be more convenient to let the Shadow Guard and Qilin come to save him? If Qinlai is injured, which one of us can bring him out? Even if the two of them weren't much weaker than adults, they were still children in the end. If Qinlai couldn't move, neither of them would be able to carry him back. I keep feeling like I'll be killed by you. Sujirue muttered in a low voice. Mo Xiaobao smiled like a cat that had stolen a fish. Cousin Jirue, don't worry. Cousin will protect you. After we go in, you go and see if Qin Lai and the little emperor are together. I'll go and see if the Zhao family has any secrets. I've seen that Zhao Zhifang before. With his guts, he definitely wouldn't dare to betray my father. When Mo Xiuyao wanted to torture someone, it wasn't something that a normal person could think of. If Zhao Zhifang was alone, even if he was given 100 guts, he wouldn't dare to betray the Prince Ding mansion in Glass City. If it wasn't for the fact that someone had something on him that he couldn't do, or that he had absolute confidence that he could escape. Sujirue hesitated for a moment before nodding, be careful. Seeing Sujirue leave like a cat, Mo Xiaobao stood up and made a hand signal to the shadow guard hidden in the dark. He said in a low voice, protect Jirue. Feeling someone leave in the dark, he followed Sujirue who had already left. Mo Xiaobao then jumped onto the wall with a smile and disappeared behind it. In the dark, he asked in a low voice, the air went in. What do we do? Don't worry. The prince said that as long as the heir's life isn't in danger, we don't need to worry about him. Another person answered. Alright, let's go in too. I hope the security inside isn't too tight. If they wanted to protect the heir, they had to follow him at all times. However, it was much more difficult to follow him in secret once he entered the courtyard. After a moment, the place where they spoke returned to silence. In a dark study in a hidden corner of the Zhao mansion, the head of the Zhao family, Zhao Zhifang, was sitting behind a desk with a gloomy expression. No one knew what he was writing. Just as he was lost in thought, a servant outside the door reported in a low voice, Master, Lord Li, Lord Zhu, and Lord Wang are here. Let them in. Zhao Zhifang suddenly stood up and said. Not long after, the door to the study was opened and a few middle-aged men filed in. The person in the lead smiled as he walked in. Brother Zhao, why did you call us here at this time today? Zhao Zhifang looked at them and said, I want you to meet someone. Who is it that makes Brother Zhao so cautious? Today is the birthday banquet of the heir and princess of the Prince Ding mansion. Although we don't stand out, it wouldn't be good if we don't show up. When he said the word don't stand out, the man's tone was full of mockery. Zhao Zhifang didn't say anything. He just turned and walked in. The other three looked at each other and followed after him. When they entered the study, they saw two children who looked about 10 years old lying on a soft couch in a compartment that was specially partitioned for people to rest. One of them asked curiously, Brother Zhao, this is the little emperor of the Dechu state. It wasn't that he was familiar with Mo Suiyun, but the dragon robe that Mo Suiyun was wearing made it obvious. Zhao Zhifang pulled out a stiff smile and said, look at the other child. The three of them looked at the child in embroidered clothes lying beside Mo Suiyun and couldn't help but exclaim, the heir. Chapter 1086. Seeing the unconscious boy in embroidered clothes on the soft couch, everyone was shocked. They stared at Zhao Zhifang who was standing to the side in horror. One of them took a step forward in agitation and said, Are you crazy? How dare you kidnap the Prince Ding mansion's heir in Glass City? Just thinking about the blood on Prince Ding's hands all these years made them shudder. The Prince Ding mansion still had the Shadow Guard and Qi Lin that were everywhere. If Prince Ding knew about this, not only them, but even their entire families and pets would not be able to escape death. Zhao Zhifang smiled helplessly and said, How could I have the ability to kidnap the Prince Ding mansion's heir? Then what is going on? Everyone looked at Zhao Zhifang with a serious expression. Zhao Zhifang sighed and said, I don't need to guess who took care of you these days, right? Hearing his words, the three people's expressions changed. Zhao Zhifang continued, he already told me, that's why I asked you to come here. The news of the Prince Ding Mansion's heir's disappearance will not be hidden for long. When the time comes, the Prince Ding Mansion's guards and Mahist army will probably search every house. When that time comes, I'm afraid it won't be hidden anymore. The three people's expressions were ugly. They stared at Zhao Zhifang and said, why did you ask us to come here for this matter? They were originally influential families in the Chu state, but after they joined the Prince Ding Mansion, they were not valued at all. This time, Prince Ding wantonly appointed officials, but he obviously excluded most of the aristocratic families. After that, the aristocratic families fought over the empty position of left prime minister. In the end, Prince Ding gave the position of left prime minister to an outsider, Chen Xiufu. At that time, they already understood that Prince Ding did not need them. Following Prince Ding, these aristocratic families that had been passed down for generations were destined to decline. Therefore, when Mo Jingli came to find them, they were quickly moved. Not only because of the benefits and future that Mo Jingli promised them, but also because they had to fight for it. Zhao Zhifang's old face squeezed out a cold smile and said, do you think that if Prince Ding finds out about this, you can escape? Right now, the Prince Ding Mansion is looking for that person everywhere. If he is caught, do you think he will expose us? Hearing this, everyone could not help but break out in a cold sweat. She secretly regretted agreeing to Mo Jingli's request. She was too impulsive. Perhaps they had been angered by the cold treatment from Ding Wangfu and the loss of the left prime minister's position. Would there really be a future for them if they followed Mo Jingli? But now that things had come to this, they had no choice but to turn back. Putting aside the fact that Prince Ding would never tolerate betrayers, just the fact that Mo Jingli had something on them, there was no way for them to turn back. Then what do you plan to do? Zhao Zhifang lowered his eyebrows and thought for a long time. He shook his head and said, the little heir still has a great use. He can't be moved, but it's not safe in my mansion. Everyone looked at each other and nodded. The Zhao mansion did not have any secret places to hide people. If they left the little heir here, it would not be safe for a long time. Then what should we do? Zhao Zhifang thought for a moment and said, we must find a secret place to hide the little heir. Then what about the little emperor? With that person's temperament, I'm afraid he won't keep him. Why don't? Not yet. If the little emperor does not attend the banquet tonight, it will arouse the suspicion of the Prince Ding Mansion. Zhao Zhifang shook his head. Reporting to Master, King Yu of Dechu State requests an audience. Outside the door, a guard reported in a low voice. Under the eaves outside the door, Mo Xiaobao sat on the carved beam under the eaves. He bent over the window and eavesdropped on the plan inside. A big smile appeared on his delicate little face. After a while, a few people walked out of the study in a single file. Before leaving, Zhao Zhifang instructed the guard at the door to keep an eye on the people inside. He then left with the other three. Today, everyone with a little bit of face in Glass City was gathered in the Prince Ding Mansion. If they did not appear, it would be even more suspicious. Seeing Zhao Zhifang and the others leave, Mo Xiaobao silently descended from the eaves. He looked at the two people guarding the door and frowned. His eyes quickly turned and he took out a small and exquisite object from his sleeve. He pressed it lightly against one of the people. With a slight whoosh, one of the people at the door fell to the ground. The other person was shocked. Just as he was about to call for help, his vision turned black, he also fell to the ground. Su Jirue stood behind the pillar with a cold expression and glared at Mo Xiaobao. Mo Xiaobao chuckled at him and pulled him into the study. Outside, two shadow guards dressed in black silently landed in the courtyard. They looked at the guards lying on the ground and smiled at each other. After a while, the two guards were moved to a secret place. Two inconspicuous men dressed in guard uniforms appeared at the door of the study. The prince is in such a good mood. He still has time to train the little heir at a time like this. I think the prince won't even bother to make a move at this level of difficulty. The little heir is quite daring. He just forgot to clean up the mess. If someone suddenly came and saw the two people lying at the door, wouldn't they be exposed? Therefore, as shadow guards, they had to clean up the mess for their masters at any time. With the little heir and young Master Su's stature, they won't be able to handle such a big thing. The two of them looked at each other and couldn't help but have a thought. The little heir swaggered in so confidently. Was he certain that they would help him clean up? In the study, Mo Xiaobao danced with joy as he happily looked around. After a while, he found many interesting things. The Zhao family hadn't moved in for long, so naturally, there weren't many secret places. Moreover, even if there were any hidden mechanisms, it wouldn't be able to escape the eyes of a certain someone who had been clever and learned all sorts of things since young. Su Jirue sat on the soft couch and watched a certain someone rummage through the cabinets while frowning at the two people lying on the couch. Many times, Su Jirue really didn't know how his cousin, who had only beaten him when he was less than 2 years old, grew up to be like this. His aunt was clearly gentle and elegant, and Prince Ding's uncle was also extraordinary and had the air of a king. However, his cousin grew up to be neither. Other than that pretty face that could still be seen, there wasn't a single moment of rest. "Are you here to see the two of them?" Su Jirue asked unhappily. Mo Xiaobao raised his head and glanced at him. He casually threw over a small porcelain bottle and said, "What's there to see? They were drugged. Just smell it and they'll wake up. This is from Sister Yunj. It can cure all the sleeping incense." After speaking, he continued to flip through the letters and booklets that he took out from one of Zhao Zhifang's locked cabinets without raising his head. Su Jirue wordlessly placed the medicine bottle under Qin Lai and Mo Suiyin's noses for them to smell. As expected, Qin Lai was the first to wake up in a short while. He wasn't surprised to see Su Jirue and sat up silently. After a while, Mo Suiyun also woke up. However, he wasn't as calm as Qin Lai and almost cried out. However, Qin Lai and Su Jirue both covered his mouth. Chapter 1087. Mo Xiaobao stood up from the bookcase and stuffed a thin booklet into his arms. Obviously, he had found what he was looking for. Waving his hand, he said, "Don't be afraid, it's our people outside." Mo Suiyun looked at Mo Xiaobao, who was dressed in plain clothes, and then looked at Qin Lai, who looked exactly like Mo Xiaobao and was dressed in black brocade clothes and looked more like Ding Wangfu's heir than Mo Xiaobao. He was speechless. Mo Xiaobao didn't care about Mo Suiyun's shock at all. He smiled and put his hand on Mo Suiyun's shoulder. "Good brother, thank you very much." No matter how stupid Mo Suiyun was, he knew that he was being used. He angrily pushed away Mo Xiaobao's hand, pointed at Qin Lai and asked, "Who is he?" Mo Xiaobao smiled and said, "This is not important." "Don't they look alike? Like twin brothers? This isn't easy to do." Mo Suiyun looked at Qin Lai for a long time before saying, "Such a perfect disguise, no wonder Uncle Prince Ding could fool Genom of Gojoseon and King Li." Mo Xiaobao smiled and pulled Qin Lai's face. "This is especially hard to do. Normal people can't learn it." "I don't know it either." Qin Lai raised his hand and slapped away Mo Xiaobao's hand that was messing around on his face. "He's shorter than you." Mo Suiyun looked carefully for a long time before saying, "He's Qin Lai." When the word "short" was mentioned, the aura around Qin Lai's body immediately turned cold. Although his face couldn't be seen because of his disguise, just by looking at the cold light in his eyes, one could tell that this was Qinlai's sore spot. In terms of age, Qinlai was the oldest among them, but in terms of height, he was only about the same height as Suzhirue. Suzhirue wasn't even 10 years old yet. Not being tall was every man's pain. Boys were the same too. Seeing that Qinlai was about to explode, Mo Xiaobao hurriedly pressed him down and smiled. Don't be angry, don't be angry. Little Emperor, it was a slip of the tongue. We can't afford to pay for it. Mr. Shen also said that you started martial arts too early and matured late. After 16, you'll start to grow. Being comforted by a little brat who was several years younger than him, Qinlai didn't feel comforted at all. Suzhirue stood by the side and looked at them with his arms crossed. He said unhappily, "Are you leaving or not? Do you think this is your home?" Mo Xiaobao smiled and said, "Go, you and Qinlai go, I will stay with the little emperor." Nonsense. Suzhirue glared at him coldly. He had the demeanor of the second son of the Su family. Mo Xiaobao's face drooped. Brother Zhirue, if we leave now, how are we going to play when Zhao Zhifang comes back and finds out? Suzhirue said, "Didn't you find something? Go back and hand it over to Uncle Prince Ding's husband, and he can come here directly to arrest them." What's there to catch? I don't know which rat hole Mo Jingli is hiding in. If I run away, he definitely won't come out. Otherwise, who knows what kind of destruction he'll cause. If he gets angry and kills people in Glass City, what will happen to Axayan, and Lin Er's first birthday banquet? Also, Royal Father said that we have to put on a good show tonight to scare those old men who don't know the severity of the situation. If the show is lost, I will die a horrible death. Mo Xiaobao said righteously. Suzhirue rolled his eyes. Then what do you want? Mo Xiaobao took out the book and stuffed it into Suzhirue's arms. You go back with Qinlai first and give this to my royal father and mother. I will stay here and see how powerful this Mo Jingli is. Mo Suiyun didn't agree. If you want to stay, then stay. I don't want to stay here and risk my life with you. Mo Xiaobao looked at Mo Suiyun with a fake smile. Brother, you are wrong. We are clearly on the same boat. How can you run away before leaving? Mo Suiyun said, I only agreed to cooperate with you to bring you here, but I didn't agree to accompany you to catch Mo Jingli. Mo Xiaobao's delicate little face instantly turned sinister. He grabbed Mo Suiyun's collar and shook it hard. Humph. You want to leave after boarding this prince's pirate ship? Do you want to do it or not? Do you want to do it or not? If you don't want to do it, do you believe that I will shout loudly and tell Mo Jingli that you are working with me to trick him? Mo Suiyun waved his hand away in exasperation. You lunatic. You don't want to live anymore. Mo Xiaobao stared at him with a slightly wretched smile. If Mo Jingli really comes, I might be able to escape with my life. But it's hard to say for you. I understand. Mo Suiyun gritted his teeth and glared at Mo Xiaobao. Mo Xiaobao nodded in satisfaction. That's a good boy. Stay here obediently and accompany me. I can guarantee your safety. How does the saying go? For a brother, you are willing to sacrifice yourself, right? Aren't we good brothers? Pay. Who's your good brother? If I'm your brother, I'll only be stabbed by you a few times. After settling Mo Suiyun, Mo Xiaobao sat on the soft couch and waved his hand at Suzhirue and Qin Ran. All right, Qinlai, come with me and change your clothes. Then you two can go back first. Qinlai looked at him indifferently and said, I'll stay, you go back. Mo Xiaobao puffed up his little bun face and stared at the face that was exactly the same as his. I'm the prince. I have the final say. You secretly disguised yourself as this prince and ran out. This prince hasn't settled the score with you yet. Qin Lai looked at him indifferently and said, what is it that you can do but I can't do? You don't have to stay here personally. Other than not being as wretched and vile as a certain person, he wasn't worse than Mo Xiaobao in any other aspect. He wasn't older than Mo Xiaobao for nothing. No. He still wanted to see that pervert Mo Jingli. Lord Father told him a very interesting thing, he wanted to verify it himself. Otherwise, it would be a pity. Qin Lai was too lazy to speak and casually pulled out the dagger that Su Jirue used to defend himself and pressed it against his neck. Go. Mo Xiaobao was stunned and wanted to say something, but Qin Lai pressed the dagger down a bit more, almost piercing his neck. Are you going or not? Mo Xiaobao was dumbfounded. For the first time in his life, he found that he was being threatened. Moreover, the person who threatened him was threatening him with his own life. How ridiculous. You're not even my wife. Mo Xiaobao cursed in his heart. But the one wearing shoes was afraid of the barefoot, and the barefoot was afraid of the one who didn't care for his life. Compared to Mo Xiaobao who liked to play tricks on others, Qin Lai was the one who didn't care for his life. After being stunned for a moment, Mo Xiaobao was finally defeated. He could only unwillingly glare at Qin Lai and walk to Su Jirue's side. Seeing Mo Xiaobao defeated, Mo Suiyun became happy instead. Jin finally knows why you're so crazy. Because you guys aren't normal people. Coming out of the study, Mo Xiaobao saw the two guards standing at the door and wasn't surprised at all. It's been hard on you guys. It's not hard, it's what this subordinate should do. One of the guards replied seriously. He silently said in his heart, little Shitzi, the best consolation for us is that you don't cause too much trouble. Mo Xiaobao nodded his head and said, protect the people inside. Jirue, let's go. Su Jirue speechlessly followed Mo Xiaobao. Even if this study is remote and people rarely come here, you don't have to be so carefree as if it's your own backyard. Chapter 1088. Tonight, the entire Prince Ding mansion was ablaze with lights. The main hall in the front yard of the Prince Ding mansion, which was used for entertaining guests, was also full of guests. Sitting at the head of the table were naturally Mo Xiuyao and Yi Li. On the right side were Mr. Qing Yun and the Su family. On the left side were Qin Shoufu, Su Qingchen, and the important civil and military officials of the Prince Ding mansion. Further down were the guests and envoys of various countries. Below, Mo Suiyun and Mo Jingyu sat in the seats of the guests of Dechu State, but both of them looked a little absent-minded. Opposite them, in the seats of the West Hill envoys, an official behind Lei Tingfeng whispered in Lei Tingfeng's ear, I haven't seen the little heir of the Prince Ding mansion all day. Lei Tingfeng looked up and saw that the seat belonging to the little heir, Mo Yuchen, was still empty below Mo Xiuyao and Yi Li. And he didn't seem to see Mo Yuchen when the two children were doing their homework at noon. Lei Tingfeng glanced at the calm Mo Xiuyao and Yi Li, raised his eyebrows and said with a smile, we are guests, don't worry about these things. Lei Tingfeng didn't care, but it didn't mean that others didn't care. A man from the western region stood up and asked curiously, Prince Ding, why don't I see the little prince of your mansion? It was no wonder that these envoys were curious. The western region didn't have much contact with the Central Plains. Others had seen Mo Xiaobao once or twice, but these envoys had never seen Mo Xiaobao. Naturally, they were very curious about the future heir of the Prince Ding mansion. Mo Xiuyao smiled faintly and said, the heir is not feeling well and will come later. It was just a simple sentence, but everyone present could understand the meaning and thoughts behind it. Thus, some people's expressions changed slightly, some looked pensive, and some looked worried. Mo Xiaoyao glanced at the crowd below, and his gaze paused for a moment on Mo Jingyu and Mo Suiyun. Mo Jingyu and Mo Suiyun immediately felt a heavy pressure pressing down on them as if it was real. Mo Suiyun's face paled, and he hurriedly lowered his head. The wine cup in Mo Jingyu's hand shook, and some fine wine spilled out onto his sleeves. Ignoring the gazes of the people around him, Mo Jingyu hurriedly put down his wine glass and clenched his fists tightly under the table. Mo Xiaoyao stood up, raised a glass of wine and smiled. Today is the first birthday of my son, Yu Feng, and my daughter, Yuya. Thank you all for coming from afar. I and the princess consort propose a toast to everyone. Beside Mo Xiaoyao, Yili also raised her wine cup and proposed a toast to the guests below. Everyone hurriedly stood up and said, "We should be the ones wishing the heir and princess a happy birthday." The guests and the host drank a cup, and the hall instantly became lively. Mo Xiaoyao waved his hand, and the maids wearing the Prince Ding Mansion's uniform immediately came forward to pour wine for everyone. The sound of musical instruments faintly sounded in the hall, and beautiful dancers started to dance. The entire hall was bustling with noise and excitement. After a song and dance ended, the envoys from various countries came forward to present their congratulatory gifts. The gifts from the Prince Ding Mansion's subordinates were naturally normal. Some were treasures that symbolized peace and joy, and there were also some interesting things among them. However, the gifts from the various countries were different. Not only did they flaunt their country's treasures, they also faintly had the intention of competing with other countries. The northern tribes had just fought an earth-shattering battle with the Prince Ding Mansion, and had suffered heavy casualties. However, they were also the country that was most anxious to repair their relationship with the Prince Ding Mansion. Hence, the northern tribes were the first country to present gifts, and the gifts were not ordinary. The moment the two boxes were opened, the contents of the boxes shocked everyone present. In the cage on the left was a snow-white, flawless, and adorable blue-eyed fox. On the other side, in a box, there was indeed a huge green lotus flower. Although this lotus flower had been plucked, it was still in full bloom in a box carved from cold jade, as if it had just been plucked from a pond. Beside the lotus flower was a dark green lotus seed pod. The others were fine, but when Shenyang and Dr. Lin saw the items in the jade box, their eyes immediately lit up. Yilu Hong smiled and said, "These are the treasures of the northern tribes, the blue-eyed snow fox and the fiery lotus. We wish the little prince and princess a happy birthday." The crowd was in an uproar. Needless to say, the fiery lotus had a deep relationship with the Prince Ding Mansion. There was even a time when Mo Xiaoyao's life depended on this lotus flower. However, after Yili found a replacement for the sky-falling flower, the idea of plucking the fiery lotus was never mentioned again. However, the fiery lotus was not as simple as an antidote to frost poison. If it was in the hands of a godly doctor like Shenyang, its effects would not be inferior to the sky-falling flower. As for the blue-eyed snow fox, it was known as the treasure of the northern tribes. Even in the northern tribes, it was rarely seen. It was said that it lived on the snowy peak of the western tribes, just like the fiery lotus. Ordinary people would be lucky enough to be able to catch a glimpse of it. The fur of the blue-eyed snow fox was even more precious in the western regions. It was priceless. Not only was the blue-eyed snow fox smart and cute, its fur, flesh, and even blood were all treasures. The people in the Central Plains were fine, but many of the envoys from the western regions were envious of the little fox in the white jade cage. Yili smiled and nodded, "Thank you for the trouble, Crown Prince Yilu. Xian will definitely like the gift from your highness." Although Xian was still young, it was not suitable for her to get close to pets, but this blue-eyed snow fox was still young. In a few years, when Xian grew up, she would be a good companion. Yilu Hong smiled. "How could that be? On behalf of my royal father, this prince congratulates Prince Ding and Princess Consort. At the same time, this prince hopes that our two countries will be prosperous and peaceful. Mo Xiaoyao smiled faintly. This prince offers a toast to the crown prince. Yelu Hong nodded and raised his wine cup. It should be me who proposes a toast to Prince Ding. Please. Everyone present knew that the Prince Ding mansion and the northern tribes had signed a peace treaty. Yelu Hong's declaration was just for the sake of the envoys present. It meant that the dispute between the Prince Ding mansion and the northern tribes would end here. After all, the northern tribes had been weakened by the Prince Ding mansion, and there were many small countries in the western regions that were eyeing them covetously. In this world, no one could easily live a peaceful life. Then, Lei Tingfeng and Mo Jingyu also came forward to present their gifts. They were all rare treasures. Although Princess Anxi and Pu had not found the little prince's whereabouts, they also presented their gifts appropriately. However, given the relationship between Princess Anxi and the Prince Ding mansion and the Su family, their gifts were naturally not as scheming as the others. They only gave a few precious specialties from Nanzhao. Later on, the envoys from the western regions presented even more strange gifts. Many of them were things that the people of the Central Plains had never seen before. It was an eye-opener for many people. Although Prince Ding had no intention of ascending the throne, it was already a grand occasion where people from all over the world came to congratulate him. In the midst of the singing and dancing, some of the guests suddenly groaned in pain while holding their abdomens. Soon, like a plague, more than half of the people in the hall had collapsed. After a while, the remaining half also collapsed. Everyone seemed to have been stripped of their bones, lying weakly on the ground, unable to move. Only Mo Xiaoyao, who was the most powerful among them, was still sitting steadily. However, his expression was not good. Chapter 1089. Prince Ding, what's going on? The envoys of the western regions clearly did not expect to encounter such a situation. They looked warily at Mo Xiaoyao, who was sitting in the main hall. They thought that the Central Plains people were plotting something, but when they saw that the Su family and the Prince Ding mansion's trusted aides had all collapsed, they couldn't help but feel even more confused. Mo Xiaoyao sat in a wide chair, one hand supporting Yili who was leaning on him. He said calmly, I also want to know what's going on. Mo Jingli, are you still not coming out? Ha ha ha. Mo Xiaoyao, you've finally fallen into my hands. At the entrance of the main hall, a man wearing a bright yellow dragon robe walked in. He looked at the guests who had collapsed in a mess with a smug expression. Mo Jingli waved his hand, and many men wearing black clothes and holding swords rushed in, surrounding the main hall. Mo Jingli walked to the center of the main hall proudly and looked up at Mo Xiaoyao. His Ming Emperor's dragon robe shone brightly under the candlelight. Other than his pale face, Mo Jingli really did have the aura of an emperor. Mo Xiaoyao, you didn't expect this, did you? The mantis stalks the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind. In the end, the winner is still me. Mo Xiaoyao looked calmly at his smug face and said calmly, I don't see what you have to be so proud of. Mo Jingli laughed coldly. Mo Xiaoyao, you don't need to put on an act to scare me. Can you still move? My agarwood intoxication will poison the stronger the person. If you could still move, would you still be sitting there talking to me? Mo Xiaoyao lowered his eyes and smiled. If that's the case, why don't you come up and try? Mo Jingli's eyes narrowed. He stared warily at Mo Xiaoyao for a while, then laughed and said, You're right, I don't dare to come up. So you don't need to provoke me. I don't even need to come up to kill you. Mo Xiaoyao nodded and said, So, the so-called Emperor Chu is a piece of trash that even a person who has lost all of his internal energy is afraid of. No wonder did Chu State's Empress Dowager and her subjects wanted to depose you. If it was I would have crippled you 800 years ago. Compared to Mo Jingqi, you're still lacking. Mo Jingli's eyes flashed with anger. If the person he hated the most in his life was Mo Xiuyao, then what he hated the most was people saying that he was inferior to Mo Jingqi. He could admit that he was inferior to Mo Xiuyao, but he never thought that he was inferior to Mo Jingqi. What? It's a pity that he's dead, and soon you'll be dead too. 100 years later, the people of the world will not think that I am inferior to you. They will only know that I defeated Mo Jingqi and you, Mo Xiuyao. I am the true number one person in the world. Speaking of pride, Mo Jingli did not forget to look at Yili beside Mo Xiuyao. He smiled and said, Yili, don't you think so? Yili calmly looked at him and lightly said, if you think so, then so be it. It was just a simple sentence, but it caused Mo Jingli's expression to change 3 times in an instant. This was because Yili's words and tone were like she was telling a madman that everything he said was right. Yili, come down. I can spare your life. Don't try any tricks, your internal strength is not strong. Even if you use a bit of strength, it's not like you can't move. Mo Jingli stared at Yili and said in a low voice. Mo Xiuyao held Yili's waist and looked at Mo Jingli with a cold light in his eyes. You don't need to worry about Yili's life. If you have the time, you should worry about yourself. Or, did I not teach you enough lessons? Mo Jingli was stunned. He seemed to have thought of something and his expression became strange. After a while, he finally began to laugh. He pointed at Mo Xiuyao and said in a fierce voice, Mo Xiuyao, you're still so arrogant. Even now, you can't save your own life, so how can you save Yili? I will definitely make you die an ugly death today. Yili, come here. I can let bygones be bygones. Yili raised her eyes and looked at him as she calmly said, how is it that this consort doesn't know of anything that requires this distinguished one to let bygones be bygones? A trace of ruthlessness flashed through Mo Jingli's eyes. Do you think that Mo Xiuyao can still protect you right now? Yili smiled without saying anything. She calmly leaned against Mo Xiuyao's shoulder and ignored Mo Jingli. Mo Xiuyao held Yili's waist with one hand and played with the wine cup in his hand with the other. He looked at Mo Jingli and said, I am very curious. How did you poison her? In the Prince Ding mansion, it was definitely not easy to poison someone. Otherwise, the people in the Prince Ding mansion would have been poisoned hundreds of times already. In the wine. That's not right. Even the people who didn't drink were poisoned. It's in the candle. Mo Jingli's eyes flashed and he smiled. Prince Ding is truly quick-witted. This colorless and tasteless agarwood was not wasted after all. It's a pity that Prince Ding doesn't know about it now. Don't you think that it's too late? Mo Xiuyao shook his head and said, even so, it's impossible for your people to do it. Who else can step forward now? Let us see what kind of people would dare to do such a thing behind Ai's back. The hall was completely silent. No one stood up. This scene made Mo Jingli feel like he had lost all face. These people had helped him in secret, but now that Mo Xiuyao was about to die, these people still didn't dare to step forward and openly stand behind him. Mo Jingli didn't know that in these people's eyes, unless they saw Prince Ding's head being separated from his body, they wouldn't have the courage to stand out and openly betray the Prince Ding mansion. Mo Xiuyao has already been poisoned. What are you afraid of? Mo Jingli said coldly, looking at the people present with a threatening gaze. Not long after, one person stood up, then another. In a short while, there were more than 10 people who stood up. Among them, there were the heads of famous families who couldn't be placed in important positions, as well as officials. There was also a former general of the Dechu state who had surrendered to the Maoist army. It was clear that these people were pretending to be poisoned. Mo Xiaoyao's gaze swept over these people indifferently, finally landing on Mo Jingyu, who was still lying on the side. He said indifferently, "King Yu, you should also get up." Mo Jingyu was startled. Finally, he sighed slightly and stood up. Mo Jingli looked at him proudly and said with a smile, "Mo Xiaoyao, do you see? Do you think that everyone will be loyal to you and that everyone will be afraid of you? Aren't there still so many people who have betrayed you?" Mo Xiaoyao said with a calm expression, "Betrayal? I never planned to use them. What kind of betrayal is that? A bunch of trash. If you like them, then take them. Otherwise, you can ask them if they know any secrets about the Prince Ding mansion, or if they know any information about the Mahist army. Or, even if I were to die now, do they have a way to send you out of Glass City alive?" Hearing Mo Xiaoyao's words, the faces of the people who stood up became even more unsightly. Mo Jingli's expression changed. He sneered, "Since I dared to enter the Prince Ding mansion, I didn't plan on leaving alive. But to be able to drag you, Mo Xiaoyao, and so many people here down with me, my death is worth it." Chapter 1090. Then congratulations. Mo Xiaoyao said without much sincerity. Mo Jingli stared irritably at Mo Xiaoyao, who was sitting on the throne. A sense of helplessness rose in his heart. It had been like this since he was young. It was as if he could never gain the upper hand in front of Mo Xiaoyao. No matter how bad Mo Xiaoyao's situation was, in this dangerous situation, it was as if the one who always lost was him. If he had Ling Taihan's or even Mu Qingsang's strength, he could take this opportunity to rush up and stab Mo Xiaoyao. But even in this situation, he still didn't dare to get close to Mo Xiaoyao. He was afraid of Mo Xiaoyao. Mo Jingli couldn't help but admit this in his heart. This was a fact that he had always been ashamed to admit. Kill him for Zhen. Seeing Mo Xiaoyao's calm appearance, Mo Jingli suddenly lost his patience and became more and more annoyed. A black-clothed man stepped forward and cautiously walked up the throne room. But when he saw that Mo Xiaoyao didn't react, he became more confident that Mo Xiaoyao was poisoned. He gathered his courage and took a few steps forward. The man was so agitated that the corners of his eyes twitched a few times. No one would be able to remain calm if they wanted to kill Prince Ding with their own hands. He finally drew his sword and slashed towards Mo Xiaoyao. No one saw Mo Xiaoyao make a move, but they heard the black-clothed man scream. He was thrown down from the throne room and fell to the ground, spitting out blood. It was clear that he had been thrown down by someone with extremely high internal strength. Everyone present let out a sigh of relief. Seeing that Mo Xiaoyao was fine, they didn't know if they should feel lucky or regretful. Mo Jingli's expression turned even uglier. "You're not poisoned." Mo Xiaoyao ignored Mo Jingli's question and said indifferently, "You can't kill I. Now, what do you want to do?" Mo Jingli's face was extremely ugly. After a while, he sneered, "So what if I can't kill you? We don't believe that they aren't poisoned like you. Kill them all." The men in black who came with Mo Jingli were all fugitives who knew that they were going to die. When they heard Mo Jingli's order, they didn't care who the guests were and directly drew their swords to attack. Whoosh! 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 Countless arrows pierced through the air. At the same time, the guests all stood up. Those who knew martial arts stood up to fight back, while those who did not know martial arts dodged. In just a few moments, the men in black that Mo Jingli had brought with him all fell to the ground. He was not subdued by the guests present. Instead, he fell to the ground like the previous guests. What's going on?" Mo Jingli said angrily. Although he wasn't completely poisoned, the people around him, including Mo Jingyu, weren't spared. You have the nerve to use such a small trick like the agarwood intoxication. Shen Yang's voice came from a corner of the hole. The agarwood intoxication is indeed a very good knockout drug. It's colorless and tasteless. It can be mixed in water and can be burned. It's a pity that the antidote is easy to find. And the most common antidote is the ice jade orchid. But, if one takes the antidote made from the agarwood fruit and smells the ice jade orchid, it will become another type of poison. Everyone then realized that the flowers used to decorate the hall were all orchids, and more than half of them were ice jade orchids. Only, the ice jade orchid was a type of orchid with very small flowers. It was placed among many other expensive orchids, and if one didn't pay attention, they wouldn't be able to see it. Mo Jingli's face turned black. He gritted his teeth and said, Shen Yang. As expected, it's you who spoiled our plans again. Shen Yang smiled and said, Prince Li is too kind. It's just a coincidence. Coincidence my ass. How could there be such a coincidence in this world? Mo Xiaoyao clearly knew of his plan long ago. He even knew clearly what kind of poison he was going to use. Prince Ding really has good methods. In order to capture us, he didn't hesitate to risk the lives of so many guests. Mo Jingli gritted his teeth and said. If he didn't care about anything when he first came in and just slashed randomly, even if Mo Xiaoyao had people secretly protecting him, he definitely wouldn't be able to protect every single one of them. As expected, when these words were said, the guests' faces turned ugly. They didn't care if Prince Ding wanted to capture Mo Jingli, but if he used their lives as bait, that was too much. Prince Ding, what do you mean by this? The envoy from the western regions knew Mo Xiaoyao the least, so he took the initiative to question him. Mo Xiaoyao smiled calmly and said, I've frightened everyone. It's just that, the song and dance are boring, so I invited everyone to watch a good show. I guarantee that no one will be hurt. What guarantee does Prince Ding have? Someone asked sharply. Based on the fact that no one is hurt. Genom King of Gojoseon, Crown Prince Yilu, Queen of Nanzhao, Princess Helan, what do you think? Mo Xiaoyao asked with a smile. Lei Tingfeng sighed and said, I admit defeat. Prince Ding is brilliant. I concede defeat. Yilu Hong was even more direct. This humble prince admits defeat. I'll add another 1,000 horses to Prince Ding. Since the horses had already been given, there wasn't much of a difference between 10,000 and 11,000 horses. Yilu Hong admitted that he could afford to lose. Princess Anxi was worried about her child. She nodded slightly and said, I concede defeat as well. Princess Helan blinked and giggled. Everyone's eyes lit up and shone brightly. It said that the people of the Central Plains are very smart. Prince Ding is the smartest among them. I concede defeat as well. Within 2 years, I'll charge you 20% less for the furs and herbs that my northern tribes sells to the Prince Ding mansion. Mo Xiaoyao nodded satisfactorily and said with a smile, thank you. Since all of you are so generous, this prince will kindly accept it. Mo Xiaoyao. Mo Jingli couldn't help but roar. How could he not understand that he had been tricked by Mo Xiaoyao? He was even used as a bet with the northern tribes and Nanzhao of Xiling. Such humiliation almost made Mo Jingli lose his mind. Mo Jingyu, who had fallen to the ground, was pale and unfocused. It's over, Mo Xiaoyao said leisurely. Jingli, I told you more than 10 years ago that you shouldn't do things that require you to use your brain. That's not suitable for you. With your personality, if you have the upper hand, how can you make a clean move without humiliating I? If I were you, I wouldn't even enter this hole. I'd just shoot arrows from outside. Do you think I only have these bargaining chips? Mo Jingli sneered. Although he was extremely angry, Mo Jingli was no longer a teenager. He quickly controlled his anger. Mo Xiaoyao raised his brows and said, "What else do you want to say?" "Oh, right, the Prince of Nanzhao is in your hands, right?" Mo Jingli sneered but didn't say anything. Mo Xiaoyao didn't care. He said calmly, "So what if he's in your hands? That child is in Glass City, right? Whose house are you hiding in? I don't believe you have many strongholds in Glass City. Who can tell I where Mo Jingli is hiding the Prince of Nanzhao?" Mo Xiaoyao looked down at the people below him. No one spoke for a while. Mo Xiaoyao lowered his eyes and said, "No one is willing to say. I wonder if your family members are willing to say." Everyone's expression changed. Most of them were the heads or important figures of famous families. Their families were definitely not as simple as a normal family with a few dozen people. Hundreds of people were implicated. The calamity of extermination, everyone trembled. Chapter 1091. Mo Jingli smiled coldly and said, "What do you think they know?" Mo Xiaoyao leisurely leaned into the chair. As he played with Yi Li's slender hand, he said with a smile, "Jingli, you've suffered at the hands of these people, but you still don't remember. Do you think that, because you have something on them, they will be obedient to you? You think that when they work for you, they won't keep something for themselves?" Mo Jingli's expression froze. He swept his gaze across the people on the ground. Many people uncomfortably avoided his gaze. Mo Jingli's heart sank. In the hall, Mo Xiaoyao clapped his hands and said, "Now, who will tell I the whereabouts of the little Prince of Nanzhao?" The hall was silent for a moment. Finally, a person climbed up shakily. "Prince! Prince, have mercy. This official will speak, ah." Before he finished speaking, he was kicked out by Mo Jingli, who was standing to the side. The person who spoke was just a scholar who didn't have the strength to truss a chicken. Even though Mo Jingli wasn't a top expert, his martial arts weren't weak either. Kicking him was like playing around. He raised his leg and sent the person flying. He crashed into a nearby pillar and spat out a mouthful of blood. Mo Jingli smiled coldly and said, "Idiot. You think that if you speak, Mo Xiaoyao will let you go?" Mo Xiaoyao shrugged and showed a rare sincerity. "I can let you die more comfortably." In other words, whether they spoke or not, they would die. It was just a matter of how they died. Therefore, the restless crowd fell silent again. Mo Xiaoyao wasn't in a hurry. He slowly stood and walked down the hall. His unhurried footsteps gave people an indescribable feeling of pressure. Even the aggressive Mo Jingli couldn't help but take 2 steps back. When he realized his actions, Mo Jingli's face turned green and purple. "Official Zhao." Mo Xiaoyao walked in front of Zhao Zhifang and said with a smile, "Prince. Prince." Zhao Zhifang's face was pale as he replied in a trembling voice. "Where is the little Prince of Nanzhao?" Mo Xiaoyao asked. Zhao Zhifang shook his head and said, This official doesn't know." "Don't know?" Mo Xiaoyao raised his eyebrows unhappily and said, "Then what do you know?" Zhao Zhifang's gaze. He didn't dare meet Mo's eyes. He begged, This official doesn't know anything. Princesses have mercy." This official was muddle-headed and won't dare again. Mo Xiaoyao looked at him with a lowered brow. He sighed and said coolly, "Throw the entire Zhao family into prison. Choose a day to execute them." Finishing, Mo Xiaoyao didn't look at Zhao Zhifang as though he had no interest in him. Everyone on the ground stilled. They clearly hadn't thought that Prince Ding's interrogation would be so clean and efficient. Or rather, Prince Ding didn't care about the result at all. No. Your Highness, this old official knows his mistake. Your Highness, please spare my life. Xiao Zhifang cried. Seeing that Mo Xiaoyao didn't even spare him a glance, he turned his gaze to Yili, who was sitting in the main hall. Your Highness, this old official was wrong. Wang Fei, please have mercy on this official and his family. They are all innocent. Wang Fei, please have mercy on them. Yili sighed slightly. She looked sideways at Master Qingyun and smiled faintly. Grandfather, this place is chaotic. Let fifth younger brother accompany you back to your room to rest. Master Qingyun was old and didn't want to see too much blood. But he knew that today's situation wouldn't end so easily. He sighed deeply and nodded. Qingyan, come with me. Fifth young Master Su, who had been watching the show with wide eyes, looked at Yili with grievance. But he couldn't disobey his grandfather's orders. He could only help Master Qingyun out. When Master Qingyun's figure disappeared from the back of the hall, Yili turned her head to look at Xiao Zhifang, who was still begging. She asked coolly, Official Xiao said that your family is innocent. Do you know how many people would have died if your plan had succeeded? When Official Xiao did this, did he think for a moment that these people were innocent? I'm afraid you were thinking more about the benefits you would receive if you succeeded, right? Xiao Zhifang was speechless. Yili took out a thin piece of paper from her sleeve and smiled faintly. This Fei has something here. Official Xiao should take a look. Yili's bodyguard came forward to take the paper. Yili waved her hand and stood up. She walked down the hall steps and personally handed the paper to Xiao Zhifang. Xiao Zhifang couldn't help but tremble when he saw it. Yili only gave him a thin piece of paper, but he recognized that it was from a book he had hidden in a secret compartment in his study. And the things recorded in that book were things that he couldn't reveal to outsiders. Once the things in that book were made public, even if Prince Ding spared his life, he wouldn't be able to live. I'll talk. Young Shitzi, the young Shitzi has been captured. He's hidden in one of my side courtyards outside the city. The young prince of Nanzhao, this official really doesn't know where he is. As soon as this was said, everyone was shocked. Although the young Shitzi of the Prince Ding mansion didn't appear all day, which had already caused many people to speculate, they didn't expect that he was really captured by Mo Jingli. Hearing Xiao Zhifang's words, Mo Jingli didn't get angry. Instead, he laughed loudly. Xiao Zhifang, do you think Mo Yuchen is still in your side courtyard? Do you really think Shen will believe you so much? Xiao Zhifang was silent. Mo Jingli was suspicious. It wasn't impossible for him to send someone to secretly take Mo Xiaobao away after he transferred him. How is it? Mo Xiaoyao, did you win this round or Zhen? Looking at Mo Xiaoyao and Yili, Mo Jingli sneered. Mo Xiaoyao held Yili's hand and looked at Mo Jingli indifferently. Mo Jingli also knew that he couldn't take advantage of Mo Xiaoyao here today. He stared hatefully at Mo Xiaoyao and said, Get out of here, let Shen out. Otherwise, just wait to collect your son's corpse. Mo Xiaoyao lowered his eyes and said indifferently, I had someone bring a message to you before. Now it seems that you didn't hear it. Mo Jingli was stunned and finally remembered what Mo Xiaoyao meant. He sneered and said, If Shen can't even live, why should Shen care about him? Mo Xiaoyao frowned and finally nodded. Fine, I said, the longer you live, the more painful it will be. Since you don't believe me, then go out. I promise that in the 15 minutes after you leave the Prince Ding mansion, no one will do anything to you. Mo Jingli stared at Mo Xiaoyao cautiously, clearly not believing his promise. Mo Xiaoyao didn't mind and pulled Yili back to the main hall. You're really not afraid that I'll kill your son? Mo Jingli asked. He didn't believe that Mo Xiaoyao would let him go so easily. Mo Xiaoyao raised his eyebrows and said, You can try. You think I don't dare? Mo Jingli gritted his teeth and said. Mo Xiaoyao's expression was indifferent. I said that you can try. Whether or not he could kill him. Mo Jingli hesitated for a moment, but in the end, he abandoned his poisoned subordinates and rushed out. Mo Xiaoyao didn't care about his departure. With a wave of his hand, people immediately came to clean up the main hall and brought in fresh fruits, pastries, and wine. The men in black who came with Mo Jingli and the people who betrayed the Prince Ding mansion with Mo Jingli were naturally moved out as well. In less than 15 minutes, the main hall returned to its original state, as if nothing had happened. Chapter 1092. I was just joking with all of you. I've frightened all of you. I would like to punish myself with a cup of wine and apologize to all of you. In the main hall, Mo Xiaoyao raised his wine cup and smiled as he spoke to the people in the hall. The guests in the hall looked at the man in white with hair as white as snow and only felt a cold wind blowing over their heads. They also stood up in confusion and drank a cup with Mo Xiaoyao. Seeing Mo Xiaoyao calmly chatting and laughing with everyone, even the princess consort sat beside him with a faint smile, as if she was completely unaffected by the news of the little heir's capture. This made everyone doubt the authenticity of the news of the little heir's capture. But if this was fake, why would Prince Ding let Mo Jingli go at this time? Prince, what do you think? Prince Ding wants to do. The official behind Lei Tingfing glanced at the little Emperor Mo Suiyun who was sitting alone and asked in a low voice. Lei Tingfing smiled faintly and said, cleaning up, establishing power, and at the same time, playing around with Mo Jingli. It has nothing to do with us, don't pay attention to it. The West Hills' current situation did not require any more calculations and risks. What they needed was stability. As long as they could stabilize the current situation and protect the West Hills' vitality, nothing else mattered. Playing around with Mo Jingli. The official stuttered. Obviously, he could not accept Lei Tingfing's conclusion. Creating such a commotion when the various countries came to congratulate them was a slap to the Prince Ding mansion's face. Would anyone really play around with such a thing? Lei Tingfing sighed and said helplessly, it's really because Mo Xiaoyao really treated this matter as a joke, that's why, it's even scarier. To treat such an important occasion and matter as a joke, one was either muddle-headed and incompetent, or one did not care about the enemy at all. Mo Xiaoyao was obviously the latter. That official understood what Lei Tingfing meant and couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. He looked respectfully at Mo Xiaoyao. Prince Ding is so sure that nothing will happen to him. Among the people who attended the banquet tonight, it was not a small matter if any of them were injured, not to mention that the young heir of the Prince Ding mansion was among them. Lei Tingfing shook his head. He had never felt that he understood Mo Xiaoyao, and perhaps he would never understand him. In the hall, Su Qingchen glanced at Mo Xiaoyao and said indifferently, aren't you guys going to take a look? Mo Xiaoyao laughed, there's no need to rush, let him jump around for a while. It was obvious that he was treating Lei Tingfing as if he were walking a puppy. Don't overdo it, Su Qingchen reminded him. Even though Mo Xiaobao was very smart and had people secretly protecting him, he was still a child. If Mo Jingli was driven into a corner and did something to hurt Xiaobao, the losses would outweigh the gains. Mo Xiaoyao helplessly pulled Yili up and smiled, all right, we'll go take a look. We'll have to trouble Brother Qingchen here. Seeing Mo Xiaoyao stand up, the people who were still discussing paused. They heard Mo Xiaoyao say with a smile, everyone, I and Princess Consort still have matters to attend to, so we'll take our leave first. We'll have to trouble young Master Qingchen to accompany us. Everyone, please enjoy yourselves. Mo Xiaoyao spoke very politely and tactfully. But it did not prevent the people from understanding, I was going to deal with Mo Jingli. If you don't want to die, then stay here obediently. Seeing Prince Ding leaving leisurely with the princess consort, everyone turned their gaze towards young Master Qing Qin. Young Master Qing Qin smiled indifferently, looking handsome and otherworldly. Everyone, please feel free. This one will first toast everyone. Please. Young Master Qing Qin, please. Glass City was also bustling with noise and excitement tonight. It was the first birthday of the two princes and princess of the Prince Ding mansion, and all the people were celebrating together. Although it was already late, the important streets of Glass City were still crowded with people, as if it was a festival. There were also many people who were praying for the princes and princesses in various ways. From this, one could see the Prince Ding mansion's status and reputation in the hearts of the people of the Northwest. Mo Jingli quickly shuttled through the dark alleys of Glass City. He had already taken off the dazzling dragon robe he was wearing, and he was only wearing a dark inner robe. If Mo Jingli was like a complacent emperor at the banquet, the current Mo Jingli was like a disheveled stray dog. Mo Xiaoyao kept his promise and knew that no one would stop him from leaving the Prince Ding mansion. However, this did not make Mo Jingli feel at ease. He always felt that there were countless Mahist army, shadow guard, and Qi Lin secretly following him, ready to catch him off guard at any time. Fortunately, it was already May, and he was only wearing his inner robe, so he did not feel cold at all. Mo Jingli walked through the darkest alleys of Glass City, so he did not attract much attention. After walking through the alleys for more than an hour, Mo Jingli thought that he had shaken off the people following him at the Prince Ding mansion. Only then did he heave a sigh of relief and use his qigong to head in another direction. In a secret room, two children who looked exactly the same sat on the side of a simple bed. In their hands, they were holding a baby who was sleeping soundly in swaddling clothes. Mo Xiaobao looked at the baby in Qin Lai's arms and couldn't help but reach out to poke his little face, so ugly. Qin Lai said coolly, "You looked like this when you were little." Mo Xiaobao did not believe it. "That's impossible. Lin and Xian were very pretty when they were little." Qin Lai said, "This only proves that the second prince and the little master are better looking than you." Mo Xiaobao snorted and proudly glanced at his little face, saying, "You don't need to be jealous of this prince's extraordinary handsomeness. Don't you look the same as this prince now?" Qin Lai looked at the ceiling of the secret room and rolled his eyes. Mo Xiaobao looked outside and frowned, saying, "Mo Jingli will be back soon. Let's take this little demon and leave quickly." A certain person's biggest mistake was not knowing that a crafty rabbit has 3 burrows and put all his chips in one place. Therefore, Mo Xiaobao brought people to follow Qin Lai and coincidentally found the little prince of Nanzhao Kingdom who had been missing for several days. After leaving Princess Anqi, the little prince had suffered a lot. Mo Jingli naturally did not know how to take care of children, nor would he treat other people's children well. He just maintained a state where he would not starve to death. When Mo Xiaobao found him, Qin Lai was busy coaxing the child. Reality proved that even though Qin Lai had been trained to follow the Prince Ding mansion since he was young, he was far inferior to Mo Xiaobao when it came to coaxing children. At least Mo Xiaobao had 2 younger siblings to practice with. After successfully coaxing the little prince whose voice was hoarse from crying to sleep, Mo Xiaobao discussed with Qin Lai how to retreat. Qin Lai said coolly, "This courtyard is filled with Mo Jingli's people. You being able to enter does not mean you can leave. Also, you have a child with you." A half-year-old baby did not know anything. Once he woke up, he would definitely cry endlessly. Also, this child was too young and too weak. Qin Lai did not dare to take the risk with him. Mo Xiaobao lowered his head in dejection. "I made a bet with Royal Father that I could not use the Shadow Guard and Qi Lin." Qin Lai resisted the urge to roll his eyes. "You used such an important matter to bet." Mo Xiaobao pointed his finger guiltily. It's only because it's important that I bet. Royal father would not lower himself to make a bet with him over a small matter. Now that he was being mocked by Qin Lai, his expression became even uglier. Mo Jingli charged forward and grabbed Qin Lai. His expression was cold as he said, "Do you want to die?" Qin Lai unceremoniously raised his hand and stabbed towards Mo Jingli's eyes. Mo Jingli quickly raised his other hand to block. Qin Lai flipped in the air and kicked away Mo Jingli's hand. He retreated a few steps and stood firmly. He raised his chin and stared at Mo Jingli provocatively. Qin Lai's beautiful counterattack caused Mo Jingli's expression to become even uglier. Even though he wasn't worried that this brat would rebel, but Mo Xiaoyao's son was already so strong at such a young age, and his only son was, Qin Lai snorted and said, "Do you dare to kill me? If you kill this prince, then you can just wait to die." Mo Jingli's expression was ferocious. "Even if I die, it's not bad to have you accompany me in death. I want to see if Mo Xiaoyao and Yili will feel heartache after losing a son." Qin Lai clapped his hands and laughed. "Ioyo, Emperor Chu is really ambitious. So your dream is to see my royal father and mother feel heartache. So what? Even if you kill me, this world will still belong to my royal father. I still have my younger brother and sister. My royal father and mother will still live peacefully in the future. This prince feels that having Emperor Chu accompany me in death is not bad. Who knows, if my royal father gets angry, he can even send a few more people to accompany me in death. For example, Mo Suyun, and maybe even Mo Suiyun. Exchanging 3 generations of Emperor Chu for this prince is still worth it. You really aren't afraid of death?" Mo Jingli stared at Qin Lai and asked. Qin Lai smiled and said, "I should be a little better than Emperor Chu. Emperor Chu, you can try and see if you can still walk out of Glass City after killing this prince. Oh, there's also the Southern Zhao Prince. Maybe you can use him as a bargaining chip." Mo Jingli's expression was still ugly, but the killing intent on his body was gradually retracting. He was very clear in his heart that the Southern Zhao Prince could only be used as a bargaining chip when it wasn't important. If he really killed Mo Xiaoyao, a Southern Zhao Prince definitely wouldn't be able to offset Mo Xiaoyao's anger. With a cold snort, Mo Jingli finally left in a huff. "You stay with me obediently. I can't kill you right now, but that doesn't mean I can't cripple you." "This prince is so scared," Qin Lai said without much sincerity. Qin Lai said without much sincerity. He didn't pay attention to the angry Mo Jingli who left in a hurry. He walked to the bedside and clumsily coaxed the sobbing baby. In the Prince Ding mansion, Mo Xiaoyao and Yili weren't in a hurry to find Mo Xiaobao. The matter this time was originally a trial for Mo Jingli. Otherwise, if they wanted to kill Mo Jingli, it wouldn't have needed to be so complicated. It would have been done long ago.